Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to today's class, which marks the beginning of a new subject. Today we will be starting with the governance. I hope all of you are doing good. I hope your preparation also is going right on track. We'll wait for a couple of minutes. Let everyone join in the class and then we will begin. Thank you so much. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening. Hi, Karthik. Good evening. Good evening, Shamil. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Hi, Madhu. Good evening. Madhu, the morning batch of governance wasn't cancelled. It has to be rescheduled because I was not available in the morning. I had to take some other batches. That is why we have rescheduled the morning batch. It's not that we have cancelled. It will be in your timetable soon once again. So don't worry about that. Good evening. Hello, Kirti. Good evening. Hello, Devi. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. So, once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. As you know, today is the beginning of a new subject. The subject is called governance. If you have not met me earlier, if you're meeting me for the first time, my name is Harshmeet Singh and I teach governance here. Governance, as you know, is a part of GS2 of the mains examination. So, if you look at the GS2 syllabus, you have subjects such as Indian polity, international relations, social justice, and governance. So, governance fits in right there in the GS2 paper. It is very closely connected to Indian polity. So, a lot of things that we will be studying would be similar and connected to whatever you would have studied in Indian polity. Mainly, governance, if you look at the syllabus of the UPSC that the UPSC has provided, the governance part mainly is in the mains examination. So if you look at the GS2 paper, the governance part mostly features there. However, if you look in the prelims exam also, there are a few questions here and there that you might get from these topics. So what we will do is, in this course, in this entire syllabus of covering governance, not only will we be discussing certain mains questions, and we will also try and tell you how to write the answers. We'll be doing some answer writing practice as well. But those questions which have a probability of appearing in the prelims exam also, we will be covering those questions as well. So we will be having a mix of practice of both the prelims and the mains examination to make sure that you cover each and everything up. As you know, with all those other subject that you have covered, we have the SME right here in the chat, and you can also keep on asking your questions whenever you want to. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Praveen. Good evening, Rashida. Good evening, Vanshika. Vikram, good evening. No, Vikram, I have not left. I'm still here. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening, Jia. Good evening, Sulakshna. Gulam, good evening, good evening, good evening. Perfect. So, before we begin, because it's a new subject for all of you, because governance is a part of the syllabus that you have not studied so far, let me quickly tell you what exactly will we be covering in the entire syllabus. So, we have a total of 9 classes, 3.5 hours each. In these 9 classes, these are the topics that we will be covering. We'll first be talking about transparency and accountability, and how does the government ensure transparency and accountability. So within this, we will be talking about issues such as the RTI, the Right to Information Act. We'll be discussing CIC, Central Information Commission. We'll be discussing the concept of CAG as well. So CAG comes in accountability part. In transparency part, we have RTI, CIC, etc. Then we'll be talking about the issue of corruption. In corruption, we'll be talking mainly about the Prevention of Corruption Act. Not just this, some of the other things that are in the news these days. For example, ED is in the news. We'll be discussing what ED is, how does it work. PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. We'll also be discussing certain other bodies such as a Lokpal, CVC, etc. Then we'll be talking about Citizens Charter, e-governance, How is the government of India focusing on e-governance? How are we introducing more and more technology going forward? Then we'll be discussing role of civil services in the democracy. When you become a civil servant, what role would you play going forward? What is your role in the society? Beyond the politicians, what do the bureaucrats do? Then we'll be discussing about the comparison of Indian constitution with the other constitution. So we'll be taking about US constitution, French constitution, some of the important features of those constitution, comparing with that of India. And we'll also have a class on important recommendations of the second ARC. ARC here, as you know, stands for the Administrative Reforms Commission. Before you ask me, I will tell you, what book do you have to refer? No, nothing. There's absolutely no book for governance that I would recommend to you. Instead of doing any book or instead of buying any book for governance, my advice would always be focus on what we are discussing in the classroom, focus on the current affairs part. That will be good enough for you, because most of the questions from governance are related to what is in the news, and you will see as the example that I will give you going forward, whatever is in the news, that becomes important for governance. For example, there's a new government initiative, there's a new government scheme, there's a new government focus on some other area, that becomes important. No specific book would be enough to cover all of that. Thus, there is no book list that I would suggest you. Rather, I would suggest you to ensure that you are present in the classroom and you are focused a lot on the current affairs. During the class, also, we will be covering as many current affairs as possible related to the topics that we will be discussing. So, before we begin, the first class, the first topic, that is transparency. Let me see if you have any questions. So, in case you have any questions about this syllabus, about this subject, please ask them quickly so that we can get those out of the way and then we can start our class. Thank you, Gulam. Thank you. So Lakshna is asking, is governance important for prelim? So Lakshna, as per the syllabus of the UPSC, governance is a part of the mains exam. However, there are certain topics in governance which are featured in the prelims exam as well. Like we'll be discussing the CAG, Lokpal, Prevention of Corruption Act, Right to Information. So these are certain topics that can very well appear in the prelims exam as well. So we'll be discussing those also. Chituri saying, please help us know the reference book. Chituri, as I said, there is no book for governance that I would suggest. If you are someone who really has to buy a book, then Lakshmikant publishes a book for governance as well, but I would not suggest that. As I said earlier, for governance, just focusing on the classroom and focusing on the current affairs related to governance would be good enough for you. Because most of the questions from governance are related to something that is in the news, and that is why it becomes important. Got it? Done? Should we begin? Should we begin? So Lakshana is saying, when will prelims 2024 series, which last year by Byju's for 2023 prelims will be held? So Lakshana, if you're asking for test series is ongoing already. There is an ongoing test series. Okay, let's begin then. So the first topic that we'll be discussing is the concept of transparency. In this transparency, we will specifically be focusing on the topic that is right to information. Let's first focus on transparency. Let me ask you a very simple question. Do you think the governments should be transparent? Do you think you have the right to know what is happening in the government? Do you think you have the right to know how the government is taking the decision? Let me take a very simple example. When the COVID-19 crisis was taking so many lives in India, do you have the right to know how many people exactly died due to COVID-19 crisis? Do you think the government should have come up and specifically told you, sorry, we do not have oxygen, or these are the number of beds that we have available, these many people died? There was no statement like this from the government. Do you think it is important? Everyone is saying yes, it is important. So everyone agrees the fact that the government should be transparent enough. Now think of it from the government's point of view. Let's assume you are the government. Would you want to be 100% transparent? Would you want your citizens to know every single thing? Or you can take as a personal example. If I tell you that your phone should be given to your parents, if I tell you that the phone that you have should be given to your parents so that they can check your WhatsApp, they can check your history. Would you like that? Would you like that? Isn't that also transparency? Isn't that also how it should work? Right? So when it comes to governments, when it comes to countries, we are happy to say that they should be transparent. But if we apply the same logic to ourselves personally, when we apply the same logic in the sense that I ask you that you be transparent in your real life, then that becomes slightly different. Then most of you are of the view that no, we should not be 100% transparent. That is why no government in the world is absolutely transparent. See, it is human nature to hide certain things which make you come in the bad light. You do not want to share something with the people that highlights that you are not good enough. It is human tendency. When you introduce yourself to someone, hello, my name is this, what do you tell them? You tell them your good features. You tell them that I am from this college, which is the best college in India. You tell them that I belong to this city, which is very good. You tell them I have this job. You never tell them if you have certain shortcomings. You never tell them if you have certain bad aspects. That is how the governments also work. The governments also try to hide information which does not make them look in good light. The governments also want to try to make sure that they are not always transparent, especially with the information that can show them in bad light. The reality is, every government in the world does not give you 100% information. Each and every government in the world, at the end of the day, does hide some information. Either the government taps into your phone, either the government reads your email, but no government in the world in reality can claim to be 100% transparent. We'll be discussing how that works around the world, including in India. Let me first give you a historical story, a historical point of view, so that you understand this issue. All of you said that government should be 100% transparent, right? No one disagrees to this point that the government should be 100% transparent. Tell me, do you all know the history of USSR and how it disintegrated? Have you read about this? In world history, have you read about USSR, how it disintegrated, the issues behind it? Some people are saying yes. See, unless you say no, then I won't tell you. If you don't say no, then I would assume that you would already know this, right? Okay. Okay. So some people don't know. Let me tell you exactly what the history was so that you can actually connect to what I'm trying to tell you. Before 1991, we had the USSR. USSR at that time was today's Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and many other countries in that region. Together were called the USSR. Now, USSR had a very unique way of working. USSR as a country never shared any information with their citizens. There was complete wall between the citizens and the government. Like, I'll tell you an example. Recently, we had the budget speech. In the budget speech, all of us know how much is the government earning, how much is the government spending. So this is transparency. In USSR, citizens did not know anything. The government was just working. Citizens thought, okay, that is how the life is. Then in the 1970s and 1980s, there was a lot of protest from the people of USSR. People's income was declining. They did not have any money. There was poverty. There was no industrialization. All of a sudden, there was protest in the general population against the government. The result was in USSR, there was a new leader that came, and you might have heard the name, very famous person, Mikhail Gorbachev. Have you heard the name? Mikhail Gorbachev. You might have heard the name. If you have not heard the name, no issues. No issues. So he died very recently. Just a few years back, he died. He became the General Secretary of USSR, the highest position basically of USSR in the end of 1980s. So when he became the General Secretary and he thought, oh, there are so many problems, countries declining, economies going down. So what should I do? He started a policy in which he announced that I would be transparent to the people. I would be open to the people. My government will tell the people whatever they want to know. My government will tell the people how much is the government earning, how much is the government spending, how much is the government spending on building roads, what is the salary of the ministers. He thought it will build trust in the people. I will be open with everything. As a result of which, he started giving out information. Now, what was the result? When he started giving out information, when people asked for information and he started giving out information one by one, so many scams came out. One by one, there were a lot of scams that started coming out. 20-year-old scams, 30-year-old scams started to come out. People came to know that the government of USSR is so corrupt, because of which the people in the country don't have any money. Because of this openness or transparency of the government, the anger in the common people of USSR increased even further. There was protest all across the country. People were protesting against the government that, oh, you are so corrupt. That led to the beginning of disintegration of USSR. That led to the decline of USSR. So transparency every single time is not good for the government. That's why you will see across the world the governments are never 100% transparent. They will always try to hide information which does not look make them look good. Any information that the government feels embarrassed by, any information that the government feels will harm them in the coming elections, they will try to hide that. And that is a reality. However, around the world, the people have been demanding transparency. Why? Transparency is important because it makes the government accountable. Transparency is important because it makes the government accountable. Means when the government is transparent, that means people can trust the government. When the government is transparent, people know that my money is in the safe hands. You and I, we pay taxes to the government on the hope that yes, the government is using it well, because we want the government to be transparent. Now, in India, how do we ensure transparency? In India, there are two ways in which the government ensures transparency. One way is the government itself gives out information. How does the government gives out information by itself? For example, platforms such as a PIB. If you go to the PIB website, the government gives out all the information that they have. Every single day, there are 20, 25, 30 news stories on PIB. Government does this, government has done this and that. This is something that the government does from its own side. On the other hand, the other way in which you can get information from the government is by RTI, right to information. Right to information is something that we will be discussing in a lot of detail today. How does it work? How does the RTI work? Why is the transparency part important? It ensures that the people trust the government. It ensures that there is reduction in corruption. When the government officers know that someone is looking over them, when the government officers know that every action that they take, every step that they take is being seen by someone else, they will always be more responsible. The same example that I gave you. If you know that your mobile phone will be checked by your parents at the end of the day, would your way of using your mobile phone change or not? Just ask yourself this question. If you know that your parents would be able to keep an eye on everything that you do in your mobile phone, chat, surfing, your YouTube search, your Google search history, if you know that everything that you are using on your mobile phone will be seen by your parents, won't it change the way that you use your mobile phone, right? It will make you more responsible. Some would say a bit boring, but yes, it will make you more responsible. That is how the governments also work. That is how the governments know. When they know that someone is looking into their working, there are people who are looking into them, that means that their efficiency improves. Aniket has declared he will not use his mobile phone after that. You have that option, Aniket, but the government doesn't have that option, right? Government can't say, oh, now I will not govern anymore, because they would have to at the end of the day. So transparency works on both sides. It also ensures that people become powerful. As common people in the country, you have to understand we don't have a lot of power. Yes, you can say, oh, you can go to the police if something wrong happens. You can go to judiciary if something wrong happens. It's all good on paper. But we also know in reality, how does it all work? We also know that in reality, we have an issue, that is, we are not as powerful as the government. It is only things such as RTI or transparency that make sure that the power balance between the people and the government has a symmetry. Has a symmetry means we are also powerful. It also promotes the participation of people. When we know that the government is making good use of our money, we also would like to participate in how the government works. And it also makes sure that the trust between the people and the government also improves. Now, as I said, is transparency always good? When it comes to government, you will say yes. But the example of USSR will tell you no, not always good. There are some things that the governments always hide. Let's take a simple example. There are national security secrets that the governments cannot share with anyone. There are certain other critical information. There is critical information that government cannot share with anyone. For example, do you think the government should share with you where have they kept all our missiles? Do you think the government should share with us where are they storing all our nuclear weapons? No, not really. So there is always some information that the government has to withhold, and that is why you can never have 100% transparency. There will always be certain things that the government will keep with themselves, and you cannot blame the government for that, really. Now, globally, it's not just in India. Globally, also, there is a demand for the governments to be more transparent, and many countries have accepted this. Right now, 90% of the world's population, 90% of the world's population lives in those countries that have a similar kind of a law like the RTI. They might have their own variations, but the basic nature of these laws is similar. Just like in India, we have the RTI Act, the Right to Information, where you can ask for information from the government. Similarly, most of the countries across the world have this kind of a law, that is the RTI law. Specifically, 96 countries have right to information in their constitution itself. 121 countries in total have a law which is very similar to the right to information. Most of the countries beyond this 121 also are now trying to pass similar kind of laws so that they can empower the people. India also passed the RTI law as back as in 2005. It was in 2005 that India had the right to information. As I said earlier, there are two ways in which the government shares information. There are two ways in which the governments become transparent. One way is when they share information themselves. That is called proactive disclosure. Proactive means by itself. Even today, when you go to the website PIB, that is Press Information Bureau, you will get a lot of information from the government. The details of the budget, bills passed in the parliament, important decisions taken by the cabinet, important decisions taken by other committees, etc. Then there is the other way around, that is the right to information. Let's try and understand a few things about right to information. In India, members of parliament, for example, always had the right to information. In Indian polity, you all would have read members of parliament can ask questions in the parliament in the question hour. You all have read about the question hour? Remember question hour in the parliament where the members of parliament can ask questions? There are starred questions, there are unstarred questions, there are short notice questions, etc. So the members of parliament, MPs or MLAs at the state level, always had this power. They always had the power to ask questions to the government. It is we, the common people, who never had this power. They always had their right to information. They could always ask questions to the government. The government had to respond at the highest level. It is us, the common people, who do not have this right, who are not given this right for the longest time. Now, how did it start in India? If you look at the history of how did it start in India, it started in 1986. In 1986, in the Supreme Court, it was the first time that the Supreme Court talked about right to information. In 1986, the Supreme Court said that freedom of speech and expression under Article 19 should include right to information as well. In other words, the Supreme Court said that when you say someone has a right to expression, right to freedom of expression, a person can only express himself or herself when they have complete information. So, as per the Supreme Court, right to information should be a part of Article number 19 under freedom of expression. Because, as per the Supreme Court, only when the person has proper information about himself or herself, only then the person would be able to express himself or herself. Now, before we had the RTI law, in 2002, government actually passed a different type of a law. In 2002, the government first passed something called the Freedom of Information Act. Today, we don't hear about it because it does not exist now. Before RTI, this law was passed. However, it had a lot of problems. What problems did it have? For example, first problem, you could not appeal to an independent agency. If you had a problem with RTI, there was no way in which you could appeal somewhere else. And that became a big worry. There was no independence given. There was no surety that the information given here would be true information or not. That is why the government realized it very soon. And thus, in 2005, they passed a new law called the RTI Act, the Right to Information. Before we begin discussing about right to information, there are a couple of questions in the chat I'll take up very quickly. Cheturi is saying, can you give glimpse about question hour? So question hour is usually the first hour of the parliament, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's the first hour, usually called the question hour. Question hour does not have to be 1 hour always. It can be lesser, it can be more, depending upon how many questions there are, depending on what the day is like. They can also remove the question hour if they want. There are different types of questions that can be asked: starred questions, unstarred questions, short notice questions. Starred questions are the ones where oral answer has to be given. Unstarred questions are the ones where written answer has to be given. Short notice questions, again, are where you have a shorter time period to respond within 10 days. For starred, unstarred question, within 15 days, the minister has to respond. Then there is a question about Chituri saying, but MP can't ask questions about national security secrets. See, MPs can ask whatever questions that they want, but when there is a national security matter, what usually happens in that case is Parliament has a closed door meeting. So when there is a national security matter, Parliament has a closed door meeting where the answers given are not given to anyone in the public. Shweta is saying, what is proactive disclosure? Shweta, proactive disclosure means when the government discloses information by itself. When you don't ask for information, government itself tells you information. That's called proactive disclosure. Arnab, no, there was no morning class today. I did not take the morning class basically. So no. So Lakshana is saying, sometimes I read in the paper according to RTI, they should provide information written in the newspaper. So Lakshana, I'm not sure what your question is. Can we get to know what government activities through RTI? Yes, that's what we are coming to. Don't worry. Let's first read what RTI is and then you'll be able to understand. So let's first go ahead and see what RTI actually is and then you can ask your questions. So what is RTI? How does it work? Let's try and understand that. First, let me ask this to you. Has any one of you here ever filed an RTI? Has anyone here ever filed an RTI? Okay. Some people have. Okay. Some people have. Most have not. Okay. Okay. So my advice would be when the class ends today, whenever you get some time, do file an RTI. It only will cost you 10 rupees, nothing more than that. So I would urge you, I would advise you to file an RTI. Any basic question can work, but file an RTI. It will be fun. I'll tell you how to file it. So let's try and understand what exactly is RTI. In very simple terms, RTI is right to information, which means citizens of India have the right to get information from the government. Citizens of India have the right to get information from the public authorities. Let's take a very simple example. Okay, let's take a very simple example. So, simply saying, let's assume you can ask a question to the government about any government project. For example, I filed an RTI where I asked the government how much money was spent in the building of the new parliament. So they will respond to you by telling you this is the money that we have spent. You can also ask what were the different components of the expenditure. They will tell you that as well. This is the kind of information that you can ask about a government scheme, about a government authority. The logic is that the money that the government is spending is our money at the end of the day. It is because the taxes that we have paid that the government is able to spend that money. So the logic is simple, that because it is our money that the government is spending, we have the right to know where the money is going. As simple as that. That is what usually the right to information is. Now, when you say that you have the right to know information, what information are we talking about? This is the information that we get. We get information in the form of records, document that the government has, meeting memos, circulars, press release, government reports, etc. All these come under the definition of the word information. All of this is under the word information. So when you say you have the right to information, that means you can ask all these questions specifically to the government. You can ask for all these details, all this data. Now, big question, from whom can you ask for information? For example, can you file an RTI about me? Can you file an RTI that I want to know where does he live? I want to know where does he work? Can you file an RTI about me? No. Why? I don't work in the government. Your right to information or your right to ask for any information is specifically for those who are working for the government. In other words, who are public authorities. Who are public authorities. So only those who are working in the government or in the government agencies in any way, they are the ones from where you can ask questions. Who are these people? Constitutional bodies, for example, UPSC, for example, CAG, for example, let's say Election Commission of India, Finance Commission, all these are constitutional bodies. Then there are statutory bodies. Statutory bodies means those which are created by an act of the parliament. Puja, the class started at 5 p.m. Beta, 5 p.m. is the time of the class. Created by the act of parliament. For example, Central Information Commission, Lokpal, all these are statutory bodies. Then there are executive bodies which the government has formed by giving an order. All these are the bodies that come under the RTI. Apart from that, we also have certain other bodies which are substantially financed by the government. Wait, a lot of you have just joined the class, and I'm getting some questions here. People are saying that they were not able to join the class at 5. Don't worry. If you were not able to join the class at 5, we were just giving an introduction for some time. You have not missed a lot. I'll recap you very quickly, so don't worry about that. You can watch the recording as well of the first half an hour if you want. If you're not able to join, no issues. I'll just recap also very quickly. Don't worry, you did not miss out on a lot. Okay, we are just going very slow. Don't worry about that. So far, in the first 15 minutes, I only talked about the governance as a subject. I talked about the fact about what are the topics that we'll be studying in governance. I talked about the fact that you don't need to buy any book for governance. Only class PPTs and newspaper reading is good enough. Then the first topic that we started in governance is transparency. We were just discussing about the need for the government to be transparent. How does transparency help? It empowers the people. Then we discuss about how does the government ensure transparency in India. And there we started with the first topic, that is called RTI, right to information, is the first topic that we started. We discussed about how Members of parliament have always had the right to information because they had the right to ask questions in the parliament. But we, the common public, did not have the right to ask questions to the government. It was only given to us with the RTI Act of 2005. This is what we discussed. Okay. So you did not miss out on a lot. Don't worry about that. We just started reading about the RTI Act. The first thing about the RTI Act is, from where can you ask for information? So in simple terms, you can ask for information from the public authorities. What are public authorities? Public authorities are those that are formed by the government or that are run by the government. They are constitutional bodies, statutory bodies, executive bodies, and they are also certain NGOs. Now please listen to this carefully. This is important. Look at the last point. If you can't see this, let me switch off my camera if you can't see this. So look at this now. I have switched off my camera for a bit so that you can see what is written here. The last point is NGOs which are substantially financed. NGOs that are substantially financed by the government, they are also covered under the RTI. Okay. Now, let's try and understand the problem here. The phrase here says that the NGOs that are substantially financed are covered under the RTI. The problem is there is no definition of the word substantially financed. There is no definition of what is substantially financed. Does it mean 1 crore rupees? Does it mean 5 lakh rupees? There is no definition of the word substantially financed, which is a big problem with the law. It does not exactly tell you which NGOs are covered under right to information. The government does help certain NGOs. The government gives funding to certain NGOs which are doing a good job. The law says NGOs that are substantially financed by the government would be covered under RTI, but there's no clarity of what do you mean by substantially financed. Now, in RTI, there are some other interesting examples as well. There are some bodies that are not under the government, that do not take money from the government also, but even then they are under RTI. Can you identify this logo? Which agency is this? Although the name is written right here. The logo is of, yes, the logo is of BCCI. The logo here that you see is of BCCI. BCCI is Board of Control for Cricket in India. So those who watch cricket would be very familiar with this logo. Those who don't watch cricket, this is the agency that controls cricket in India. That is the BCCI. Now, BCCI is not a government body. It is not formed by the government of India. It does not work under the government of India. It does not take any money from the government of India. It is not run by the government of India. Even then, it is under the RTI. Even then, it is under the RTI. Now, how is that possible? The entire logic of RTI is that you can ask questions to those agencies that are run by the government because they are running on your money. That is the entire logic of the RTI. That where your money is being spent, you can ask questions. So why is it that BCCI is under this RTI thing? What is the issue here? Now let's look at a bit of history about BCCI to understand. Let's look at a bit of history. Those who have been watching cricket might know this, but those who don't watch cricket, have you heard about something called the Lodha Committee? Have you heard of something called the Lodha Committee? Okay, no issues, no issues, no worries. Those who have heard about this, great, no issues. Those who have not heard of it, I'll tell you what happened. So what happened was a few years back, there was a scandal in the IPL that there was fixing. So there was a scandal that came out. The issue was that there were some cricketers that were fixing matches in the IPL. Now, when this IPL fixing thing came out, the Supreme Court made a committee called the Lodha Committee. Justice Lodha is a retired Chief Justice of India. Under his leadership, a committee was formed called the Lodha Committee. Lodha Committee was asked to suggest Reforms in the BCCI. Reforms in the BCCI, that how the BCCI should improve, how they should reduce corruption, how they should tackle fixing, etc. Now, they gave a big report. One of the pointers of the report was BCCI should come under RTI. BCCI should come under RTI. That was one of the things that they had suggested, that the BCCI should come under RTI. Now, what was the logic behind it? Why is it that they said that BCCI, although it's not a government body, should come under RTI? The logic was BCCI controls the biggest sport of India, that is cricket. Crores and crores of people watch cricket. Crores of people are mentally attached, emotionally attached to cricket. So if something wrong happens in the administration of cricket, it impacts a large number of people in India. By that logic, the BCCI is responsible to the people. And by that logic, BCCI should come under the RTI. So this is an exception, especially for the BCCI. It's not a public authority. It's not run by the government. It does not take money from the government. It has its own money. It does not take any help from the government. But even then, BCCI is under the Right to Information Act because of the Justice Lotha Committee. So do remember this part. Because BCCI, as I said, as per the committee, they are handling a sport which specifically has emotions of a lot of Indians attached very, very closely with that. Now, what's the process of filing the RTI? As I said earlier, very few people, I think, in the class have filed the RTI when I asked this question to you. And my suggestion to you, all of you, would be when the class comes to an end, whenever you get the time after that, do file an RTI. It can be done online, very simple process, just 10 rupees to be given, just to get a hands on experience of how these things work. So, what is the process? When the law first began, it was very difficult to file the RTI because you had to physically go to the office, write a letter, submit the application. So, it was a very, very difficult process in the beginning. Then the government realized this, that it's a difficult process, they have to make it easier. Now it's a much easier process. Now you can do this online. You can do this online. How? I'll give you the website name also. You can file the RTI in English, Hindi, or the official language of your area. There is some information that you need to give. However, you don't need to give a reason for asking for any information. That's a good part. When you ask for information, you don't need to give a reason why is it that you want this information, which is why it is easy for the people to file an RTI. So this is the website. If you just Google RTI, this is the website that you will come to. RTI online is the website. If you can see here, look at this option, submit request. So you just have to go to this option, submit request, click here, and you will get this form. This is where they will ask you what information do you want to have. Now look at this. It's very interesting. Look at the first information that you have to give. The first information is select the ministry or the department. From whom do you want to ask for information? Now this is tricky. Let's assume, and I gave the example earlier as well, let's assume I want to ask a question, and the question is, how much money did the government spend on building the new parliament? Okay, simple question. How much money did the government spend on building the new parliament? Now, let's assume I'm a common man. I don't know which ministry would give me that information. I don't know which ministry was a sponsor for building the parliament. I don't know what department is it. So, what do I do now? If you don't know which ministry or which department is it, you don't have to worry. The law says you can select any ministry without any problem. For example, randomly, let's say you can select railway ministry, no issues with that also. You can select railway ministry also, no problem. Next, select the public authority. Again, you have no idea. You select anything random, no problem with that. You can select anything randomly here. How? Because the law says your RTI cannot be rejected because of the reason that you sent it to the wrong department. Your RTI cannot be rejected just because you sent it to the wrong department. It will be the responsibility of that department to transfer your RTI to the correct ministry. So let's assume I sent it to the railway ministry, no problem. They will then have to send it to the correct ministry. I don't have to worry about that. That is how it usually works. You don't have to worry what ministry or what department you are choosing. You can choose any. They will then have to transfer it to the correct ministry or the correct department. So you are safe here. Then you select your name, address, etc., educational status, etc. You have to write here. This is not compulsory. Only the red dotted marks are compulsory information. All the other information here is not compulsory, which you can write here. This is an example of an RTI that one of our students filed in the last batch. In the last batch, when I was teaching, just like I told you here, I told in the last batch also that I would advise you to go and file the RTI. So there was a student called Kartika. Kartika had filed an RTI. So her question, as you can see, was this. This question was, what is the cost of Gaganyaan mission of the upcoming ISRO project? What amount of input cost are sourced from Indian companies? And what amount is sourced from outside foreign companies? That was a question she asked. And this is what was the response that was given to her. So her response that she got was 9,023 crores has been spent by the government. The government is still importing stuff, so they cannot tell you how much we have imported from outside, etc. It's an example of how the RTI is filed. This is an example. This is how you get the response. So when you file the RTI, the response that you get usually is in this, like a letter in your email, which you can read out very well. So that's how RTI works. Very easy. File the RTI. It will just take 10 rupees and not more than that. You will get the information. The law says you will get the information within 30 days. Now, the law says, RTI law says, every government department should have an officer called the PIO. PIO is Public Information Officer. Every government department must have a PIO, that is Public Information Officer. Some departments, some departments that are bigger departments can also have APIO. Some departments can also have APIO. APIO is Assistant Public Information Officer. Some departments can also have assistant PIOs, assistant PIO. So what happens is when you file the RTI to any department, the RTI goes to this officer, PIO or APIO. If it is of their department only, then they will transfer it and they will basically collect information and give it to you. If you file the RTI to the wrong department, then it is their responsibility to transfer it to the correct department. They will get it to the correct department, and then this is how it will work. uh, Sri Lakshmi saying, is it only the website only for state and central? No, Sri Lakshmi, this the website that I showed you is for the central government. For state governments, you have your own respective websites. So if your question is specifically about how exactly, or if your question is specifically from a central government agency, then you go and file there. If your question is about a state government agency, then you go and file there. So there are different websites there. So that's how it usually works. Now, time limit, as I told you, when you file the RTI, within 30 days, 30, information will be given to you. However, if the information that you asked for, if someone's life or liberty is involved on in that information, means on the basis of the information that you asked, someone's life or personal liberty can be involved, then within 48 hours the response will have to be given. Within 48 hours the response has to be given. If the question that you have, on that question someone's life and personal liberty is dependent. Also remember, as I said, you can choose any department that you want, you can choose any ministry that you want. Even if you have chosen the wrong one, it does not matter. The only change will be if you have chosen the wrong ministry. If you have chosen the wrong ministry or department, then the only difference is it will take 5 more days for you to get the response. So instead of 30, it will become 35 days. If you have chosen the wrong ministry or wrong department, your RTI will not get rejected. The only difference in this case will be now the maximum time period within which you should get the response will be 35 instead of 30. That is how it changes. In this case also, if the question that you are asking, on that information someone's life is dependent, but you ask this information to the wrong department, in that case also add 5 days to it. In that case also add 5 days to it. So 5 days basically are added when you send it to the wrong department. That is how it usually works. Where she's saying if we have to find info about central sponsored scheme, we need to file RTA in central government side. Yes, you do. You have to file RTA to central government side only. Now, when you file an RTI as a citizen, you have certain rights. For example, you have the right to choose a medium of request, means you can file it online also, as I showed you, and you can file it offline as well by going to a specific department. If you want, you can go to specific department as well. Second, you can choose the language of your request, whether in Hindi or English or any regional language. That's entirely up to you. You don't have to give any reason to ask for information. You just ask for information. You don't have to tell them why are you asking for this information. So that is an entire freedom that is given to you. You ask for information, doesn't matter why you need that. That does not really change anything. Also, if you are below poverty line, you don't have to pay any fee. In that case, you have to upload your below poverty line certificate. So again, if you're below poverty line, no fee to be given. Just that in this case, now you will have to show the certificate which shows that you are below poverty line. In case your RTI is rejected, so there are RTIs that may get rejected as well. In case your RTI gets rejected, then you would have the right to know the reason as well. You have the right to know the reason why is it that it has been rejected. You can also file a complaint if your RTI has been rejected. You can file appeal as well, and I'll tell you how to do that. You can file an appeal to Central Information Commission or State Information Commission as well. Vanshika, Vanshika is asking, can you tell again how to file the RTI? Vanshika, it's not that difficult. All that you have to do is Google RTI online, and this is the website that you will get. Go here, submit request, give the information here, and it will be done. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, Vivek, Gayatri. Okay, those who are asking me to use a thicker pen, I'll do that. I'll use a thicker pen. Okay. There is one other question from a couple of people. How do we decide the 48-hour case? Or how do we decide the case if someone's life is dependent on it? Is this font better? Is this pen better? Is it thicker last time? Okay, got it. So, how do you decide if someone's life is dependent? How will I decide if 48 hours issue is involved here? It depends upon you. While you are filing the RTI, you have to prove that yes, someone's life is dependent on. I'll give you a real example. Okay, I'll give you a real example of the 48-hour case. So, this is an example of a few years back in Delhi. So, Delhi has a very famous hospital that usually treats spinal injuries. So Delhi has a very famous hospital for spinal injuries. Now, understand how hospitals work. When you are building a hospital, usually what happens, you want to build a hospital, the biggest cost involved is the land is extremely costly. So usually what happens, these hospital chains, they go to the government, they ask the government to give them the land either free of cost or at a lesser price. Why? Because they say, oh, we are building hospital, we are helping people, so you should also help us. In some cases the government does give them the land. Now, when the government helps setting up of a hospital by giving free land or subsidized land, in return, the government asks for one thing. What the government says is, we are giving you the land, but then in return, you have to reserve 25% of your beds for poor people, EWS section, free of cost. So government says, okay, we are giving you the land at a lesser cost, but promise us one fourth of your beds will be reserved for poor people. So hospital says, okay. Now what happened is, in this case, there was a person in Delhi had a very bad spinal injury, and was a matter of life and death. The person was taken to this hospital, spinal injury hospital. The hospital said, we don't have beds available for the poor section quota. They said that if you want to pay the complete fees, then you can come, but we don't have any beds available in the poor section quota. So the family members filed an RTI demanding to know how many beds are available in this hospital for the poor quota or not. And because it was a matter of the person's life, they attached all the documents, they gave all the proof that someone's life is dependent on that. So within 2 days, there was a response that came in which showed that yes, there were beds vacant and the hospital was forced to admit the patient. So that's an example of how usually this works, the 48-hour thing. But again, the problem here is, when you are filing the RTI, you have to prove by documents that yes, it is a matter of life and death. You have to prove by showing the document that yes, it is a matter of life and death indeed. So that is how it usually works. Now, this is what you can do as a citizen. What is the expectation from the public authority? See, public authorities have crores and crores of document. Have you ever had a chance to go to a government office like RTO, where lakhs and lakhs of files are kept one over the other? Have you seen those offices in real life, not in movies? Have you seen those offices in real life where you would just not find any file? There are files over files over files over files. Now imagine, now imagine if someone wants to get information which is hidden in one of those files. Do you think it is possible for anyone to give out that information? It's almost impossible to give out that information. Nowadays, a lot of records are kept online, so it's easy to find. Control C, Control V. You can just do Control F, find where the document is, and give it to you. That's fine. But if you look at the older documents, it's extremely difficult to get out that information. Even if the officer wants to help you, even if the officer wants to take out the information, the officer will not be able to even find the information. So what is it that the public authorities are expected to do? Public authorities, number one, are expected to have the information kept properly, duly indexed, and computerize them as much as possible so that it's easier to find information. They are expected to computerize as much information as possible, give out as much information as quickly as possible. Secondly, why do you have to wait for the citizens to ask for information? See, understand the logic behind RTI. Yes, RTI gives you the right to ask for information. You can pay 10 rupees to get the information. That is fine. But the question is, why do the citizens have to pay even 10 rupees for that? Ideally, all the information should be available anyways on the website of the government, on the portal of the government, right? Why do you even have to get the person to ask for that information? So the responsibility of the public authority is, rather than waiting for someone to file an RTI, publish as much information as possible by yourself. Publish as much information as possible on the government portal. Publish as much information in the public domain by yourself. Rather than waiting, rather than asking, seeing if someone else is asking for that information, why do you even have to wait? Give out information as much as possible. This is the expectation from the public authorities, that the public authorities should give out information by themselves rather than waiting. As I said, give out information suo moto. Do you understand what is suo moto? I'm sure you all would have heard this phrase in Indian polity. Suo moto. No problem, Namrata. Welcome. You can see the recording of the earlier part. Yeah. So suo moto, as you know, by yourself or by itself on its own. So as much information as possible should be given by yourself. Also, as I told you earlier, every government department should have a public information officer. At least one officer in the department should be given the post of PIO, Public Information Officer. The responsibility of this officer will be, he or she will be the one who will collect all the RTIs, who will see what the information is asked, and then try and get answer to that information. Also, if there is a wrong RTI given to you, within 5 days you should transfer it. As I said earlier, your RTI cannot be rejected on the basis of you giving the RTI to the wrong department. Citizens are not responsible for it. The law says even if you address the RTI to the wrong department, the department will transfer it within 5 days. The only difference will be, now your reply will be given to you in maximum 35 days instead of 30 days. So that is the only thing that changes. Now, what if you don't get a response? What if you don't get a response? What if within 30 days you don't get a response? Or you get a wrong response, then what happens? There can be two problems. Either you filed an RTI, you did not get any reply, 30 days have passed. Or the information that you got was incorrect, something random was told to you, then what do you do? Then you have the option to file appeal. There are two levels of appeal here: first appeal and second appeal. So you can file first and second appeal. Let's see. First appeal is what? First appeal is given to the officer within the organization who is senior to the PIO. Let's take an example. Let's assume you ask for information from the Department of Technology. Okay. Let's assume you ask for information from Department of Technology about certain government scheme. The information that they gave you was wrong, or they did not give you the information. So now when you file the RTI, it will go to the same department. The first appeal will go to the same department, just that now your application will be given to a senior officer, senior to the PIO, so that the senior officer will look into your complaint now. Again, if you did not get a response within 30 days or you got a wrong response, the first option that you have, you can file an appeal. Where does the appeal go? Appeal goes to the same department from where you had asked the question. The only difference is the appeal will go to the officer who is the senior to the PIO, so that he can look into the appeal now. How much time does this appeal take? First appeal also has to be resolved within 30 days. Within 30 days, the first appeal has to be responded. What if even after first appeal you are not happy? Then what do you do? Even after first appeal comes in, you are not happy. You still think wrong information is given to you, or you still think information has not been given to you. Then what do you do? Then you file the second appeal. Second appeal has to be filed within 90 days. Has to be filed within 90 days of first appeal. So when the first appeal response comes, after 90 days, you will have to file the second appeal. The problem is in the second appeal, there is no time limit for disposal. There is no time limit for disposal. That is a big problem with the law. Again, I will repeat. Look at this. If you are not happy or satisfied with the RTI that you filed, your first option, you file the first appeal. Where does the first appeal go? First appeal goes to the same department, to a senior officer now who will look into the complaint. That complaint has to be resolved within 30 days. Now, if within 30 days you don't get a response, then what do you do? And one more thing, the first appeal also has to be filed within 30 days of response. Within 30 days of getting the response or incorrect response, you have to file the first appeal. First appeal will be resolved within 30 days. If it is not resolved, then what do? You file the second appeal. Second appeal has to be filed with the Information Commission. We'll discuss about Information Commission in just a bit. But second appeal has to be filed with the Information Commission. They will look into the appeal now. This is called the second appeal. The problem is second appeal resolution has no maximum time period. Second appeal has to be filed within 90 days of getting the answer to the first appeal, but there is no maximum time period within which the second appeal has to be resolved, and that becomes a problem. Right now, as of today, there are thousands of cases pending. There are thousands of second appeals pending at the Information Commission. At Information Commission. Okay. For those who are having a trouble understanding the timeline, let me explain this to you again. Okay, I'll explain the timeline again so that it becomes clear to you with example. Let's take an example, okay? So today is 9th of Feb, okay? Let's take this example. 9th Feb, you file the RTI. Okay? Take simple example. 9th Feb, you file the RTI. Let's assume 20th Feb, you get the response. Okay? RTI responded. Now from here, within 30 days, if you want, you can file the first appeal if you're not happy with the reply. So within 30 days, from here till 20th of March, if you want, you can file the first appeal. Okay? Whenever you file the first appeal, let's assume that you file the first appeal on 15th March. Okay? Let's assume you file the first appeal on 15th March. Whenever you file the first appeal, within 30 days of this, means within 15th April, you should get a response. You should get a response. Within 30 days, you have to get a response. Now, let's assume you got the response, but you're not happy. Let's assume you got a response on 10th of April. After this, within 90 days, you can file the second appeal. Within 90 days, you can file the second appeal. Is it clear to you now? Is it clear to you now? So you file the RTI. Within 30 days, you should get a response. If you are not happy with that, what do? You file the first appeal. First appeal has to be filed within 30 days of getting the response. First appeal will be heard, will be responded within 30 days. If you are not happy, you file the second appeal also. Second appeal has to be filed within 90 days. But the problem is there is no time period for resolution of the second appeal. And that is why there are thousands and thousands of cases pending appeals pending at the Information Commission right now. We'll be discussing what that problem is in a bit. But there are thousands of appeal pending right now at the second appeal level. One of the reasons why the appeals are pending is that the Information Commission does not have enough people. The Information Commission itself does not have enough people. How? Let's try and understand. Central Information Commission is a statutory body created under RTI Act. It's a statutory body created under the RTI Act for 2005. The idea is simple. The idea is to make sure that there is an independent body which is separate from the government departments that can handle the RTI law. So, as per the law, this body has the Chief Information Commissioner at the head and maximum 10 information commissioners, IC's information commissioners. It has one Chief Information Commissioner and maximum of 10 information commissioners. This is where the problem is. Although the law says that there can be maximum 10 information commissioners, but in reality, government never appoints 10 people. In reality, the government never appoints 10 people. There are so many seats that are still vacant. Right now, this is the composition as of today. As of today, India has a Chief Information Commissioner and only 2 information commissioners. Just imagine. At a post where 10 people should have been appointed, there are only 2 people that are appointed. That is why there are so many cases that are just pending, lying pending at the Information Commission level. A commission that was supposed to have total of 11 members right now only has 3 members. This is why there are so many cases that are just pending, lying at the second information, that at the second appeal level, because there's just not enough staff. Now think of it, why is it happening? Why is it that the government has not appointed more people? Again, I will take you back to the first question when we started this topic. When we started this topic, I asked you, should the government be transparent? And you said, yes, government should be transparent. Then I asked you, try and think from the point of view of the government. Would the government want to share so much information? Would the government be comfortable in sharing the information? Obviously not. If the government was really comfortable sharing information, they could have published all of that in the PIB itself. Right? Government has so many ways in which it can give you whatever information that they want. If there is some information that the government has not given, that means they don't want to give that information, right? As simple as that. So there is no incentive for the government to appoint other people. Just imagine this. When you ask this question, many people ask this question to me, sir, why is the government not appointing more information commissioners? My response is, you tell me, why should the government appoint more information commissioners? Why? They don't have to gain anything out of it. If the government appoints more people, government will not benefit in any way. On the other hand, government itself might have to give out more information. So unless the people of the country ask the government that if you don't appoint more information commissioners, I will not vote for you. Unless that day comes, no government will want to appoint more information commissioners. Because why would a government at the end of the day want to be more accountable? If the government thinks that people are happy just like the things are, why would they make an effort? Think of it from the government's point of view. Why would I appoint someone when I will be the one who will be held accountable? That's not how it works, right? Avni saying, when will we have a break? Avni, I think we'll have a break around 7. We'll have a break around 7. So, yeah, close to that. Okay. So, again, that's how the governments work. You can't expect the governments to change their working if it will not benefit them. That's how it usually works. The day that you ask the government to appoint people at this position, only then you will vote, then the government might listen. Who are these people who are appointed? Let's try and understand. So they are appointed by the president on recommendation of a committee. It's a three-member committee. The three members are: one, the prime minister; second, leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha; and third, a union cabinet minister of the choice of the prime minister. So again, it's a three-member committee. As you can see, out of these three, majorities of the government, because out of the three, two belong to the government: prime minister, leader of opposition from the Lok Sabha, and union cabinet minister of the choice of the prime minister. What is the qualification, the eligibility criteria, etc.? See, usually most of these positions, information commission, election commission, vigilance commissioners, most of these people are civil servants only, because civil servants are the ones that government usually trust. Civil servants are the ones that understand how the governments also work, so they also know everything about the government's working. Every government, every political party has some favorite civil servants. When you work in the government as a civil servant, as a bureaucrat, you also come close to some political parties. So those people who are considered close by the political parties, they are the ones who usually are appointed to these positions. So, for example, in the Central Information Commission, who are the people? The qualification is they should be people of eminence in public life, having wide knowledge, experience in law, science, technology, social service, etc. Basically, civil servants only, because no other common man would have such diverse experience. It's just another way of writing civil servant, because the reality is no other person would have such a diverse experience. The law also says those who are appointed in the Information Commission, they should not be MP or MLA. They should not hold any office or profit of the government. Also, they should not be connected to any political party as such. They should not be connected to any political party as such. That's how you become the Information Commissioner. Now, the law of Information Commission, it's very interesting because the RTI law was amended in 2019. In 2019, the law was amended. How? I'll tell you what. So basically, there were two big changes in 2019 in the RTA law. Please understand this. So 2019 RTI amendment. It was debated, it was criticized also, but the government did not listen to anything. So two big changes were done. I'll tell you what. Earlier and after amendment, what was the difference? Earlier, salary of chief information commissioner was equal to salary of chief election commissioner, and salary of information commissioner was equal to salary of election commissioner. Now after amendment, what happened? Salary of CIC was done as 2.5 lakh per month, and salary of information commissioner was done at 2.25 lakh per month. Second change, tenure. Earlier tenure was 5 years. Now tenure is what the government decides from time to time. Government decides from time to time. Right now they have decided 3 years. Right now they have decided 3 years. Now understand the logic behind these changes. Understand the logic. See, the easiest way to reduce the power of any government body, the easiest way by far to reduce the power of any government body is to reduce the tenure of that body. When you reduce the tenure, the power of the body automatically lowers. Why? Because when you don't have a long tenure, you can't make a lot of changes. When you are new in the office, it will take you many months just to understand how it all works. So, implementing important changes within 3 years is extremely difficult. So when the government reduces the tenure of any body, 3 5 to 3, 5 to 4, it's a clear signal the government wants to reduce the power. Secondly, now the government has again decided the salary like a figure. So again, they can reduce the salary whenever they want. Earlier, they could not reduce the salary whenever they want because it was the same as election commissioners. These two important changes were made in 2019 RTI Act. When the government made these changes, many people criticized the government. Many people said the government wants to control the information commission. The government does not want to give out any information, but the government did not listen to them. The government said we want to make these changes, so we will make these changes. So what happened after 2019? Tenure has now come down to 3 years. The government decides that retirement age is still 65. They are not eligible for reappointment. Means once their tenure is over, that's it. They cannot have one more tenure. So there is only one tenure that they get. They cannot have more than one tenure maximum. How about the removal process? Now, in Indian polity, you would have read removal processes of a lot of bodies. So let me give you a hint here. It's a hint or it's a trick that will help you remember a lot of these. So basically, in Indian polity also, please remember only two ways of removal. One way of removal is when you remove Supreme Court judges. Other way of removal is when you remove UPSC members. If you remember these two, you will cover a lot of them. Why? Remember, UPSC judges removal is the same as Supreme Court judges removal, is the same as Chief Election Commissioner removal, is the same as CAG removal. All of these are exactly the same. Similarly, removal of UPSC members, same as removal of Lokpal, same as removal of National Human Rights Commission, same as removal of Central Information Commission, same as removal of Central Vigilance Commission. So if you remember just these two removal processes, you will be able to remember a lot of them. For example, just to remind you, those who don't know, I'll remind you once again. How do you remove Supreme Court judges? You have to start the process in the parliament. There has to be in one house, the process starts either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. If it starts in Lok Sabha, 100 members have to say yes. In Rajya Sabha, 50 members have to say yes. Three-member investigating committee is formed. They investigate if the charges are true or not. Special majority is required. Then you go to second house, again special majority is required. That's how you remove them. In case of UPSC removal, how are these people removed? This is the process. President has to refer the matter to the Supreme Court to conduct an inquiry. Supreme Court will conduct the inquiry whether the person is insolvent or convicted of any offense of moral turpitude, means morally corrupt, whether he is engaged in paid employment outside office, whether the person is of unfirm mind or body, and if the Supreme Court finds the person is guilty of any of these, Supreme Court asks the president for removal, and that's how removal is done. This process is exactly the same for UPSC members, for National Human Rights Commission, for Lokpal, CVC, etc. So please do remember, if you remember these two processes, it will be good enough for you. Just remember these two processes for Supreme Court Judge 1 and UPSC members because this is exactly the same. So that's how CIC or the Central Information Commission are usually removed. At the state level, we have the state information commissions. They work in the same manner, so you don't have to go into detail of them. State Information Commission is the same as Central Information Commission. You don't have to go into details of that. You can leave that apart. Please remember this. If you are preparing for the UPSC exam, questions will mostly always be on central government bodies. and central laws. Mostly when you're appearing for your state PCS exam, let's say you're appearing for Rajasthan PCS, Tamil Nadu PCS, Uttarakhand PCS, etc., then you would have to remember state specific laws as well. What I'm trying to tell you is, I'll give you a real example. So, a couple of days back, Uniform Civil Code is passed in Uttarakhand, right? So, Uniform Civil Code, the law was passed in Uttarakhand. All of you would know a couple of days back, right? Now, for the UPSC exam, you don't have to go into detail of the law. You have to read about the debate of Uniform Civil Code, that you have to understand. Why is it good? Why is it bad? The problems attached to it, all that is important. You have to remember that. But you don't have to remember what are the points in the law, what does the law say. If it was a central government law, then you should have remembered it. If it's a state government law, then you don't have to remember the entire law, because UPSC will not ask you. Yes, if you are appearing for the Uttarakhand PCS examination, then I would advise you to remember the law. Similarly, for Information Commission also, you don't have to go into detail of a specific state information commission. Focus only on the Center Information Commission part, and that would be good enough for you. Okay. Now, an example of a question that has come. 2019, we just discussed, there was a change in the law. The major changes were tenure and salary were changed. That became a center of the debate. That is why it was so important that in 2020 UPSC asked this question in the mains exam in GS2. The question was, recent amendments to RTI Act will have profound impact on the autonomy and independence of the Information Commission. Discuss. Now, it's a simple, straightforward question. But you could only answer this question if you actually know what were the amendments. That is why I was telling you earlier as well in the beginning. For governance, you don't need to focus on any book. For governance, focus on the current affairs part and on whatever we discuss in the class. Because the UPSC will mainly ask you questions specifically about what has recently happened. And no book will be able to cover what has happened very recently, because the books were published earlier. So rather than focusing on the books, focus on the newspaper reading, current affairs, etc. So this was a question asked specifically here. Now, do you want to see how the answer is written? Do you want to see how exactly do we write an answer? Do you know how does it work? Let's try and write this. So let's try and write this collectively. So what I want you to do is, you first write an introduction to it. Okay. What we will do is write an introduction to it. I'll first tell you what to write in the introduction. Just listen to this carefully. Now, usually, how do you start an answer? Usually, when the answer has to be started, what do you do in the introduction part? So there are two options. In the introduction, there are two options mainly. Either you start with a fact or you start with a definition. One of the two. You either start with a fact or a definition, meaning that read the question and see, is there any complex word in the question that needs to be defined? Is there any complex word that can be defined to begin the answer? For example, let me give you one more example of a question. Let's assume if there was a question which said that there are a lot of stumbling blocks in the implementation of the Uniform Civil Code in India. Full stop. Discuss the future of Uniform Civil Code in India. Okay. Let's assume the question would have been that there are a lot of issues or there are a lot of stumbling blocks in the implementation of the Uniform Civil Code in India. Full stop. Discuss those issues or discuss the future of Uniform Civil Code. If that would have been the question, you could have started your introduction by giving a definition of what is Uniform Civil Code. You could have defined Uniform Civil Code means having same kind of civil laws, for example, marriage, divorce, etc., irrespective of the religion, caste, etc. Whatever definition that you want, That could have been a definition. So now you understand, whatever the question is, depending upon that, you decide in the introduction part whether you can start with a definition or a fact. So now in this case, look at the question. In this case, if you look at the question, there is no word that would be required for a definition. If you actually see here, there is no specific word that requires a definition. It's a simple question, no complex words as such. So the better thing is to go ahead with the fact. Also also whenever the question is about something that happened recently, please remember, when the question is about something that happened recently, for example, the news itself, the question itself is recent amendment, it's always better to go with the fact. For example, in fact, you can just write, the government of India last year amended the RTI Act, changing the tenure and the salary of the information commissioners. That erupted a large controversy or a large debate in India about the future and the independence of the information commissioners. That's good enough. That can be a good introduction. That can be a fact also. So you have to decide whether you start with a definition or an introduction here, depending upon the question. So Vivek is asking, can we utilize quotations in intro or conclusion? So I'll tell you what. I will advise you use quotations in essays because you have a very large word limit there. In GS answers, when your word limit is only 150 words or 200 words, every word matters. So if in 150 words you write 15 words in just a quotation, I don't think that's the best use of your word limit. So the quotations, etc., you can do, but you can make sure that you actually use the quotation more in essay rather than the GS paper. So let's have something like this. Either this, I'll give you multiple examples. So either this can be an intro, a fact, or the intro can be about the 2019 amendment. Decide whatever your intro will be. Now, whatever intro you write has to be maximum 2 lines. Ideally, 1 line is good enough in the intro also. You don't have to go beyond 2 lines. So the ideal division of words is this. Ideal division is 10% words in intro, 10% conclusion, and 80% main body. That's how your ideal division should be. So for example, if it's a 150 word answer, 15 words intro, 15 word conclusion, 120 word main body should be good enough. So when you say 15 words, 1 line, maximum 2 lines are good enough. Don't go beyond 2 lines in the introduction because it is just unnecessary. You have wasted your words. So the question is very simple. It is asking you about recent amendments and the impact it will have. So basically, first you have to talk about the amendment. So what amendments have been done? You would write about that. Amendments mainly are about the salary and about the tenure. Over here, I am just giving you a rough structure of the answer. The answer that you find here is not the ideal answer. It's a rough structure of the answer to give you an idea what exactly should you write. So here you have to mainly focus on the two changes that are made, salary and tenure. To make it easier for the examiner, you can make a table also, like the table I made here, something like this. You can write this table also, obviously in a better handwriting, not like this. But yes, the idea is you can obviously make this table as well of earlier and after, or before amendment or after amendment table. You can write salary dash tenure dash, so that it becomes very easy to read for the examiner as well. So you can understand, you can tell what amendments exactly have been made here. Then you can write about the issues in the amendment and why was the amendment required. So don't just write one side of the story. Unless the question is specifically asking you only one side of the story, that is the negative impact it would have, you should write about the other side of the story as well. So negative impact, as we discussed, it will impact the independence of the information commissioner, it will lead them to partiality, they will favor the government, etc. But there are certain pointers from the government side as well. Government justified why do they need it. Government also said why do we need to actually change it. Government's argument was that they are not at the same level as election commissioners. Understand the government's argument. Government said election commissioners are constitutional bodies, so they are one step higher. So we cannot give them the same salary as election commissioners. We cannot give them the same salary as election commissioner because their stature is higher. So government's argument was election commission, information commission have different functions. They don't deserve the same salary. They don't deserve the same power. Also, if you look at the CIC, the CIC salary was equal to election commission, means equal to Supreme Court judges, because Supreme Court judges salary also is equal to election commission only. So that also was not good, because the constitutional position of Supreme Court judges, of election commissioner is higher. As per the government, they wanted to correct that, and that is why they have done this. So unless the question specifically tells you to write only one side of the story, if the question specifically tells you what are the problems in the law, or what are the issues in the law, what are the cons in the law, if the question specifically asks you this, then write only one side of the story, only one side points. But if the question is not asking you from one side only, if look at the question, they're asking you, it will have an impact on the autonomy, discuss. Now discuss basically means write both sides of the story, discuss the negative impact also, discuss the positive impact also. So write the government side as well, and write the arguments that are given against the government as well. Write both the sides here so that you can actually give a balanced view. And then you can give a way forward in the conclusion. Way forward is should be an ideal version, usually middle path, something like this, that the government must strengthen the act to bring in more transparency and objectivity. The government should bring adequate provisions to ensure cooperative federalism is strengthened. Basically, very generic data here has to be given. It's a very easy answer to be written. But again, you can only write this answer if you know what amendment was done recently. If you had no idea what was the amendment done, you can't write anything in this answer, because UPSC will not give you a mark just because you tried to write. See, remember when we were in school and when we had our school examination, our parents used to tell us, beta, even if you don't know the answer, just write something. Write something, you will get at least 1 mark. Remember that? Our parents used to tell us, don't leave the answer blank. Write something. Even if you write 1 or 2 lines, you will get 1, 2 marks, don't worry. Everyone's parents used to say the same thing. UPSC does not work like that. UPSC does not work like that. Even if you write one full page, but it is not related to the question, you will get absolutely zero. You will not get even half a mark if you don't write something that is related to the question. So don't waste your time. If you don't know the answer, don't waste your time just by writing something, hoping that the examiner will at least give you half a mark because your parents told you so. The UPSC examiner is not your parents, so they will not give you any mark. They will even become angrier maybe for the next question. So it doesn't work in UPSC. You have to stay specific to what your question is. Now, what do you have to ask? Let me first quickly take up your questions. There are a lot of questions. Please tell me what your questions are regarding whatever you have studied till now, then we'll go ahead. So Lakshna is saying the question which asked about disadvantage of a certain thing can be concluded in a positive way. Yes, Lakshna, in the conclusion, you can give a positive way. Dipesh is saying, what is Freedom of Information Act 2002? So, Dipesh, before the RTI Act was passed, the government first introduced something called Freedom of Information Act 2002, but it was removed very quickly. It had a lot of problems. Like, it did not have any independent body like the CIC. All appeals were made to the government only. So, that was a problem. It was removed very quickly. Shweta is saying, how many months of current affairs should be read before the exam? Ideally 15 months, 1 5. Minimum 12, ideally 15. Shalu is saying how amendment reduced the independence of CIC. So Shalu, before the amendment, tenure of the CIC was 5 years. Now the tenure will be decided by the government. So now what happens if CIC, let's assume, takes a certain decision that the government does not like. Tomorrow government will say, okay, I'm reducing your tenure. I will make you retire tomorrow. So that reduces the independence. When you reduce the tenure, it reduces the independence. Taran is saying best way to read current affairs. Best way to read current affairs should be Current Affair Monthly magazine. That should be good enough. So Lakshna is saying, can you guide on prelims 2024 regarding current affairs? So Lakshna, the best way to prepare for any prelims examination is to give as many tests as possible, solve as many questions, read the explanations carefully. That should be the best way forward. Current affairs are best covered using Current Affair magazine. There are a lot of good monthly magazines available in the market. Buy any of them. Vivek is saying, has RTI become a toothless tiger in the present scenario? It has. It can be said for many government bodies. It has become a toothless tiger. And the reason mainly is that, again, they don't have a lot of powers. Tenure has been reduced. They don't have enough staff also. That's why their effectiveness has reduced considerably. Then Veninder is saying, I am attempting 2025. Should I follow magazine or just the Hindu? Vininder, the only difference is a current affair magazine, a good magazine, has current affairs from multiple sources, not just the Hindu. So choice is yours. I would advise you to ask questions regarding what we have studied and not other questions, because that will not there will not be any end to it. Thank you, Vaishna. Thank you. My pleasure. I hope from tomorrow you are able to join the class on time. My pleasure. Vanshika is saying how to write a good answer. Vanshika, start practicing as soon as possible. You'll only improve with time. That's why we are doing answer writing practice. So it will become better. Preeti Singh, is there any overlap between political science and governance? Can we do them together? Preeti, political science, if you're asking about the optional subject, no, there's no overlap. Indian polity, it has a bit of overlap. Vaishna, you can file RTI, but please understand RTI is filed when you want to ask a fact. For example, you cannot ask in the RTI that why is the government not appointing more information commissioners? Why? Because it is not mandatory for the government. The law says there can be maximum 10 information commissioners. So government will say maximum 10 means 2 also is fine. So in RTI, you can ask facts, but you can't ask the opinion. That's not how it works. Okay. They were saying when we are asked to critically analyze, evaluate a topic, should we rise with negative points only? No, Divya, write positives as well. Think of it as a film cricket. A movie critic tells you negatives and positives as well. Okay. Perfect. Let's go ahead then. So, continuing with the RTI. Now, again, RTI has not ended. There is a lot more that we need to study in this topic. Now, the one other thing with the RTI specifically is the need for balance. In the sense that we discussed in the beginning, you cannot expect the government to roll out all the information that they have. At the end of the day, the government has to keep certain information with itself. At the end of the day, the government has to make sure that there are certain information that the government is not sharing with anyone. Now, how do you balance that? For example, when you ask a question to the government, a lot of times the government denies the RTI. A lot of time government rejects the RTI. Why? Saying that, oh, it is a secret. I can't give this information. It's a secret. Now, this becomes a problem. That is, when you actually say that something is a secret, when you actually say that something cannot be shared with anyone, that means you are giving a free hand to the government to decide randomly what's a secret and what's not a secret. There are a lot of exemptions that the RTI has. Exemption in the sense there is a lot of information that you cannot ask for. There's a lot of information that the departments can hide even from the RTI. Let's look at what those informations are. What are the controversies about it? First, any information that impacts sovereignty and integrity of India, any information that impact the security of India, our strategic economic interest, any information that impacts our relationship with any foreign country, any information that can lead to an offense, all this information will not be given, it will be rejected. Not just this, any information that causes the contempt of court or a breach of legislative privilege. Now, what is breach of legislative privilege? I'll give you an example. So, for example, let's assume as a member of parliament, you have access to some information that common people would not know. If you're a member of parliament, you would be privy to a lot of debates in the parliament, closed door debates also. Only you would know this information, no one else would know this information. If someone asks you that information that only you know in the RTI, it will not be given to the person. Why? Because it is a breach of legislative privilege. And information that was given to someone in the legislative because of their stature will not be shared with anyone. Not just this, third party commercial confidential information, trade secrets, etc., will not be given. Any information with a person in a fiduciary relationship will also not be given. Now, what do you mean by fiduciary relationship? See, fiduciary relationship means there are some people who work with you in such a capacity that you have to share your information with them. For example, your doctor, your lawyer, your CA, your accountant, etc. They would obviously have a lot of information about you that you would not want them to share with anyone. They took this information from you in confidence. You gave this information to them hoping that they would not share it with anyone. That means they are in a fiduciary relationship with you. You cannot give this information to anyone. So, similarly, let's assume there is a lawyer that the government hired, or there is a company that the government hired. That company or that lawyer now gets to know some information about the government because they're working on a government project. That information cannot be given out in the RTI because this is information that was acquired as a part of a fiduciary relationship. Fiduciary relationship is a relationship that you have with a professional under which you give information to them for their working. That information should still not be shared with anyone. So if the government's fiduciary relationship is with anyone, that information cannot be given out in the RTI. If the government gets information from a foreign government in confidence, they cannot give out this information. I'll give you an example of this. A few years back, the government of India contacted the government of Switzerland. We asked the government of Switzerland, please give us information about the people who are Indians but who have money in Swiss bank accounts. I'll repeat. What happened was, few years back, the government of India got in touch with the government of Switzerland. We asked them, please give us information of Indians who have account in Swiss banks. Now, Switzerland government said, we will not give you this information. It's a personal information of those people. We can't share it with you. But India said, please give us this information. We will not share it with anyone. India said, if you give us this information, we promise, we will not share it with anyone. Now, if government of India got this information from Switzerland by promising them, we will not give it to anyone, please give this information to us. Then if you file the RTI, government will not give you this information. Why? Because we acquired this information from a foreign country in confidence, means by promising them. that if you give us this information, we will not share this information with anyone. That is this clause, that if there is an information that is received in confidence from a foreign government, from the foreign government, if you get this information, in that case, this information cannot be given out in the RTI. Also, any information that endangers someone's life, any information which is a part of ongoing investigation, any cabinet paper which is not public right now, which the government is still discussing, any government paper that the government has not released so far. I'll give you an example. Let's assume, let's assume that after 10 days the government has to give the budget speech. Okay, just an assumption. Let's assume the government has to give the budget speech after 10 days. So today you file the RTI that give me the budget speech right now. Do you think the government will give it to you? No, because they have not even made it public so far. So only that information will be given to you, which is already public. Information that the government itself has not released will not be given to you. So you being over smart and asking for information in advance from the government so that you have the breaking news with you, no, that will also not be allowed. Any information which is regarding personal information of any public authority will not be given. Let's take an example of this. Let's assume there's a minister. Okay. Now, Mr. Minister is a public authority. You can ask questions to him. But can you ask personal information of that minister? No. You cannot ask, oh, I want to know about where does this minister family live? Or where does this minister's son or daughter go to college or school? Or where does this minister's wife or husband work? No, you can't ask that information. Even when you're asking information to public authorities, their personal information cannot be given to you. Only their official information that is in the public domain shall be given, not personal information. Then information that can be denied due to copyright infringement also will not be given. For example, if I ask for information from DRDO, tell me how the missile is made. I want to make Agni missile at my home, in my garage. Will they give this information? Obviously not. If I ask the, let's say, government of India, please tell me how to make a nuclear weapon. I also want to make it at home. I am on my summer vacations. Will they give that information? Obviously not. All that is an infringement of the copyright. They will not give you that information. Also, the government may deny you information if it is a part of Official Secret Act. We'll discuss this in just a bit. Now, if you look at the laws in India, we have a law called OSA. OSA is Official Secrets Act 1923. It was an act introduced by the British. As you can understand, it was introduced because the British wanted to hide information. They did not want information to go out in the public. So they basically came out with this excuse that whatever information we don't want to give to people, we will call it official secret. It continues even today. Even today, we have a situation that when you file the RTI, when the government does not want to give you information, they will just say, oh, this is an official secret, we can't give this information to you. That is also a big problem. We'll discuss Official Secret Act also in detail in just a bit. What about intelligence agencies? Can you ask for RTI from them? What about intelligence agencies like RAW, like IB, Information Bureau, can Intelligence Bureau? Can you ask for information from them? Yes and no. What is yes? What is no? You cannot ask for information about their work. They are a secret organization. Obviously, they will not give you information about their work. So, about their work, no. But if you have to ask information about certain corruption within the organization or human rights violation in the organization, If the question is either about corruption within these intelligence organizations, or if the question is about human rights abuse within the organization, then you have the right to file the RTI. But in these cases, answer will be given to you within 45 days and not 30 days. This is within 45 days that the answer will be given to you, not within 30 days. And no work related information can be asked in such cases. In such cases, you can only ask information which pertains to certain corruption related issues in these organizations or certain human rights violations in these organizations. There's a long list of these organizations, not just RAW and IB, long list. And I'll tell you, this is the list. This list can be changed by the government from time to time. You don't have to remember the entire list, but just read it. These are the organizations where you cannot file the RTI about their work. You can only file the RTI with them about either corruption issues or human rights violation. Like, for example, Intelligence Bureau, RAW, Directorate of Research in Revenue Intelligence, DRI. Then there is ED, Narcotics Control Bureau, BSF, CRPF, IDBP, CISF, etc. There's a long list till here, till number 25. So this is the list of those organizations about which you cannot ask any work related information. This is also something that has been criticized. Many people say it's a very long list and the government is trying to hide a lot of information. Many people argue that the government should cut short the list, make them more transparent, only then they would be able to work efficiently. But the government says for their independence, for them to work properly, they need this peace of mind that don't worry, no one will ask you questions. So for these organizations, you can only ask questions about either their corruption or human rights related issues. Gulam, yes, for ED also. This is ED. So ED, you usually call them Enforcement Directorate, but the official name of ED is Directorate of Enforcement. So it is ED only. Enforcement Directorate, Directorate of Enforcement is the same thing. That is ED. Okay. Vivek, this is your CID. This is your CID. Okay. Now, the impact of RTI has been immense. I still remember I was a kid when the Act was first introduced. I don't remember clearly. I can tell you this from my vague memory. So I have a vague memory that one of the first cases of RTI, I'll tell you what was that. It became very famous. One of the first cases of RTI was there was a lady, I think in Ghaziabad, her Activa got stolen and she had filed an FIR. Nothing came out of it. Police did not do anything. Someone suggested her to file an RTI asking for information from the police about what is the status of investigation in her case. So she filed an RTI. It was one of the first few cases of RTI in India. It became very famous, so famous that the police found out the Activa within a week and they saw the RTI has been filed. So at that time, when the law was first introduced, it was extremely good. I'll tell you why. Because the law has a very important provision. The sad part is that provision is not used now. But the law has a provision. The provision is if you don't get a response within 30 days, if within 30 days you don't get a reply, then the officer who had to reply, his salary would be deducted. That was a very important provision. It still exists. If within 30 days that officer who was responsible to give the response, that officer did not give the response, then the officer's salary will start getting deducted. But the problem is now this does not happen. Why? Who decides the salary reduction? It is decided by information commissioner. So information commission decide that. For many years they have not used this provision. For many years you will not see any officer being given the penalty of a salary reduction. That is why the impact of this law that was extremely good when it was first introduced. It gave a ray of hope to a lot of people. The impact that it had has been reduced drastically. Now people don't think of it as a very powerful law. Unfortunately, the government officers also have gotten used to it. But when it was first introduced, it was extremely, extremely impactful. Anyway, let's take a break. Come back at 7:20, and we'll resume from here. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. I hope everyone is back now. GI is asking, what about foreign countries? Do they also have exception for body like FBI, CIA? GI, it's a different law altogether. So let's not compare their law with ours. It's like asking what RTI has for those agency. It's very different. So it's a different matter altogether. It's like comparing apples and oranges. Anyways, let's go ahead then. So, as I was discussing, the RTI Act, at least in the beginning, had a lot of impact. Vivek is saying, can we get truth about mysterious death of Shastriji by RTI? Vivek, you have to understand what will you ask? Will you just ask, I wonder about the truth of Shastriji's death? They will tell you he died on this date. There are a lot of books written on him. In fact, there's a book written by a very famous author called Anuj Dhar. He wrote a book called Your Prime Minister is Dead. That's a book on the mystery of Lala Bahadur Shastri's death, in which he, in fact, filed many RTIs to get information, but all of that was denied to him. So, yes, you also can go ahead and file those. Shweta is saying, what is breach of legislative privilege? Please explain again, Shweta. There are a lot of information that only members of parliament know because they are privy to what is happening in the parliament. So if you ask for that information, that will not be given to you. That's a breach of legislative privilege. Okay. So, as I was saying, the RTI, at least in the beginning few years, had a lot of impact. From my own memory, I told you about this case. In fact, in the beginning of the first decade of the 21st century, there were a lot of important issues that came to light because of the RTI Act. For example, if you actually see, the RTI Act led to the people believing that they can actually get out information from the government. The people, for the first time, believed empowered. For the first time, they thought that now we have access to whatever the government has in its own records. As I told you earlier, it was only the members of the parliament that could ask questions to the government, that could take information from the government. But now that right was given to the common people. That was also an era that a lot of right based legislations were being made. Right based legislation means, for example, if you remember, around the same time, right to work was introduced, Manrega, then right to food was introduced, the Food Security Act. All these things, right to education around the same time. In fact, before this, a lot of these right based acts were being introduced one by one. All of them were doing a great job of empowering the common people. For the first time, it empowered the people to keep an eye on the government officials. The people running the government departments, for the first time, understood that their actions are being watched over by others. They understood the fact that for the first time, their actions can't be hidden. Whatever they do, the file can open at any point of time. Anyone can look into that. Anyone can ask questions about the decisions that they're taking today. And the most interesting part is the decisions that the government officials take today, they can be challenged many, many years down the line because of the RTI. In fact, this is one of the reasons why a lot of government officials even today dislike the RTI. Do you know many politicians, many government officers say that we don't like the RTI? And I'll tell you why. For example, ex-Chief Minister of Telangana, if you look at Mr. KCR Rao, he has always been a big critic of RTI. He has always been a person who has spoken against RTI. I'll give you a real example. So let's assume that you are a district collector. In your district, unfortunately, there has been a lot of floods. Okay. Now, because of those floods, people lost their lives. Now, the government announced that anyone in your district whose house was destructed, because of the floods, will get 5 lakh rupees compensation. Okay. Now, usually when the government announces such compensation, the responsibility is given to the district magistrate. They have to be the ones who identify the people whose house were destroyed. They will be the one who will initiate the process. They will be the one who will distribute the check. Now let's assume a situation that you are the district collector. In your district, Your responsibility is to identify the people whose houses were destroyed so that you can distribute 5 lakh rupees each of check. Now, there's an old lady that comes in. This old lady tells you that her house was destroyed, but she has no family. Doesn't have any official property papers to prove it was her house. She says that I don't know where the papers are, but I have been living in this house all my life. You ask other people around that place, everyone tells you she's telling the truth, that yes, she is the one who used to live in this house for a long time. But she doesn't have any paper to prove that. Now, as the district magistrate, what do? You want to help the people, you want to help her. She doesn't have any other source of income, she doesn't have any other place to live, her house has been destroyed. What do you do? Because she can't prove that this was her property. So, you are a good person, kind hearted, you became an IAS to help people. So, you basically give her the check, thinking that okay, I'm helping her, no issues. Now, after 3 or 4 years, let's assume someone filed an RTI. In the RTI, they wanted to know who were the people who were given a check of 5 lakh rupees by the district administration after the floods. They got the list of people. Then they came to know that one of these people, this old woman, did not have any paperwork, but she was still given the 5 lakh rupee check. This person can then start to blackmail you, that I know that you took commission from her. That is why you gave her 5 lakh rupees. I will take you to the court. If you don't want me to file a complaint against you, then give me this much rupee, etc. That is a real life scenario that can happen. That's a real life scenario. So the problem here is many officials say that RTI law prevents them from going beyond their duty. Many officials say that before the RTI was introduced, we were able to help people without worrying a lot. But now we worry that because of RTI, everyone is keeping an eye on us. Everyone is now looking at what we are doing. Everyone is now looking at whether we are doing the right thing or not. That becomes a problem. Now, if you look at the RTI, the act as such has certain issues. Number one, it has some vague phrases. For example, if you remember in the beginning, I'll just remind you, I'll just take you back. When we discuss this, from whom can you ask for information? Which are the authorities covered under the RTI? The last point says NGOs that are substantially financed by the government. I discussed about this. There is no definition of the word substantially financed. There is no definition of the word substantially financed. Now, the problem is that when you don't know what is substantially financed, when you don't know what is substantially financed, then how do you know what exactly will be covered, what exactly will not be covered? That becomes a big problem here. So the law does not have very clear cut definition. There are still a lot of vague terms that are being used in this law. Next problem, the right to reject frivolous application. So when you file an RTI with, let's assume, the government of India, any government department, the government department has a right to reject your application, calling it frivolous. What is frivolous? Frivolous means non-serious. Frivolous means non-serious. Something that is done just for fun or with evil intentions. Now, the problem is the department can reject your RTI on the basis of the fact that this particular RTI is filed with the wrong intention. That gives a free hand to the government department. Who is the government department to decide what was my intention? The problem is using this particular law. Using this particular law, we now have a situation where a lot of frivolous applications or some applications are being rejected just by calling them frivolous. That also becomes a problem. Apart from that, possible abuse of exempted organizations. As I showed you before the break, there's a long list of organizations that have been exempted from RTI, where you cannot file RTI except for issues of corruption or human rights abuse. It's a long, long, long list, and the government keeps on adding to that list. So the problem is a lot of officers working in these organizations get a free hand, and that is why the RTI law is not as effective as it used to be. That is why, if you look at across the country, the Central Information Commission and the State Information Commissions also have not been as effective. A lot of state information commissions are working without their head. Jharkhand, Tripura, many states, in fact, UP, Telangana, Rajasthan, for many years don't have their information commissioner in place. Why? Because again, it's not a top priority for the government. And why is it not a priority for the government? Because it's not a priority for the people. People don't ask questions to the government. Why are you not appointing these people? And that's why the government itself has never taken this as a priority. In fact, 3.3 crore RTI applications have been filed in 15 years. About over 2 lakh of them are pending where at the second appeal level. Now the reason why they are pending at the second appeal level is that at the second appeal level, as we discussed, there is no time limit. There is no time limit at the second appeal level where you can actually expect the reply to be given within a time period. That's why there are a lot of these applications that are still pending right now. Karthik is saying most people don't even know what CIC and RTI Act. That's the reason. It is true. And I'll tell you one of the reasons. See, one of the problems that we have to understand is in our education system, for example, some things which you should know to become a responsible citizen are never told to you. I'll give you a simple example. Okay. Let's take a simple example. If I ask you today, everyone, if I ask you today that do you know where to buy a Bitcoin? If you have to buy a Bitcoin today, do you know where can you buy it? What do you think? Yes or no? Do you know some platforms where you can buy Bitcoin? Okay, okay, okay. Let me ask you one more question. Do you know where can you buy some shares or SIP, whatever you want to call it? Do you know where can you buy some shares? On what websites, on what apps, etc.? You know that? You know where you can buy these? Okay. You know this, right? You know there are certain apps where you can buy this. Now, my question is, you know how to buy shares, okay? You know how to buy shares. Even though your school did not tell you how to do it, your college did not tell you how to do it. So, how did you come to know? Your school did not teach you how to buy shares or where to buy shares. Your college did not teach you. So, how did you know this? Did your parents tell you? Your parents also would not have told you in most cases. So, if your parents did not tell you, if your school did not tell you, college did not tell you, then how did you know? What do you think? What do you think? Either you saw some ad, mostly by ads. Mostly you saw ads either on the TV or on the internet, or you saw some ads in between your matches, etc. So, what happened is you know about a lot of things because there is a lot of awareness around you. You know a lot of things that were not taught in school or college because either you saw them being marketed in the news channel, you saw them on the internet, you saw them in the ad, your friends talked to you about it, something or the other happened in that case. However, in this case, RTI, etc., is something where people have not been made aware of. You will not see any news channel telling you that you can file an RTI. This is how you should file an RTI. You will not see any ad where you are told, oh, this is how you can file the RTI, etc. No. None of that is told to you. That is why there's a lack of awareness. Other problem in the RTI Act is the bureaucratic mindset of the officers. Please understand this. Let me try and explain this to you. In India, lakhs of people prepare for government jobs every year. In fact, crores of people prepare for government jobs. For now, forget about the UPSC exam. Okay? Forget about the UPSC exam. Let's talk about the other jobs, other government jobs in India. Lakhs and crores of people prepare years and years and years for government jobs. Why? Why do you think people prepare for government jobs? Why is it lucrative? What do you think? Why do people spend so many years preparing for government jobs? Why is that the case? Okay. Most people are saying the same thing, job security, right? Most people say job security. Now try and understand something. Try and understand this. Job security, what do you mean by job security? The simple explanation of job security is that no matter what, you will not be kicked out of your job, right? The meaning of job security is what? That means no matter what, you will not be kicked out of your job, which is true. When we had the COVID-19 pandemic, lakhs and crores of people lost their jobs in the private sector. People working for the government were still getting paid. So this is what you mean by job security, right? That you will not be kicked out. Fine. Now understand this. You joined a job after working for so many years because you thought no matter what I do, I will not be kicked out of the job. Now tell me very honestly, in such a job, would you be willing to work extra hard? Tell me very honestly. You took a job because you know that no one can throw me out. Now, when you get this job, would your mindset be now I will be the best worker here? Do you think that will be your mindset? Obviously not. Obviously not. Your mindset will not be that no, I will be the best one, I will be the most or the best performing one. No. That is called bureaucratic mindset. Bureaucratic mindset means that you become a part of bureaucracy. When you become a part of bureaucracy, that the mindset that you have is not to go beyond your duty, share information, etc. Your mindset in most cases is whatever the system has established, let's just continue in that system. I don't want to change anything, I will not do anything extra. Whatever has been established by the system, let's continue with that. That's your mindset usually, right? And that is the bureaucratic mindset. So when you introduce the RTI law, and when you tell the common public, or you tell rather the officers that now onwards, you will share all the information with the public. Now people will ask you questions, you'll have to give them information. Would you be happy? As a government officer, would you be happy? Won't you think, oh, this is not why I did the job? Your first reaction would be, I did not join or I did not work so hard for a government job to do this. I did not do this so that I can keep responding to people. That's a problem with the bureaucratic mindset. That the officers who are working in the departments of the government, they have no incentive to go extra. They have no incentive in giving out and sharing of the information. They have no incentive in making sure that they are actually helping the people. The other problem, no budget is given for RTI. See, when you ask the departments that now you have to ask or you have to give answers to people's questions, it all costs money. Why? You ask the government departments to keep the records in such a manner that they can easily find information. You have asked the government departments to computerize information. All that requires money. So where do they get the money from? There's no budget given to them. The reason why common people do not know about RTI is that there is no publicity done for RTI. And the reason is there is no budget given for that. See, all the publicity that you require, all the publicity that would result in people getting to know about it, all that requires spending money. And when there is no budget given for that, there is absolutely no way that the people will ever get to know about that. And that is what becomes problematic. Also, the PIO, that is public information officers, are usually junior rank officers. What do you mean? So for example, what happens in this case is when the department has to appoint someone as a PIO, okay, when the department has to appoint someone as a PIO, public information officer, they don't bring someone from outside. All the existing staff they already have. One of the persons from the existing staff itself is told that from tomorrow you will work as a PIO also. So when the government department has to appoint one of their people as a PIO, they don't recruit someone from outside. Someone who is already doing some job, who already has some work, is told that now you are the PIO also. So for the PIO, it's an additional responsibility. They are not getting paid extra for this. For the PIO, it's an additional responsibility. They already were doing some job. Now they were told you have to do this also. And they are usually junior rank officers. Now imagine you file an RTI to a department. There's a junior rank officer who is a PIO. If he has to get information from his senior to answer in the RTI, it's not that easy. In the government department, the hierarchy is very strict. If the seniors tell the junior officers, I will not give any information, there's nothing that the junior officers can do in these cases. So, because the PIOs are usually junior ranked officials, they don't get a lot of power, a lot of influence in the department to get out the information. Suo moto disclosures are very, very poor. I discussed about suo moto. Suo moto means by itself. The RTI law says the government departments should not wait for people to file the RTI. Rather, they should by themselves give out as much information as possible. Publish information on your website, publish information in your magazine or report, etc., so that people don't have the or don't find the need to file the RTI. But such suo moto disclosures have been very poor. There have been very few suo moto disclosures that have been done. That is also a big problem. As I told you, PIOs are given additional responsibilities without any extra income. Just imagine you are an officer, you work in a certain office. Tomorrow you are told you will handle one more job without any extra salary. Would you be happy? Obviously not. So even the PIOs who have been asked, who have been given the responsibility to handle RTIs are not given extra money for that, and that becomes a big problem. The record management itself is very poor. Even if the government officer wants to share information, it's very hard for themselves to find any information. They can't take out information. There are files and files, thousands and lakhs of files, one over the other. It's almost impossible to take out any information from there. And that becomes extremely, extremely problematic. The problems don't end here. The other problem is penal provisions are rarely used, means penalty is not used. Remember, I just told you the law says if the officer responsible has not responded within 30 days, there is a provision for salary deduction. But this is not done now. Because the government officers also know that this law is not used, they are also free. The only reason why people or government officers would adhere to this law would be if they fear that their salary would be cut, or would be if they fear that action will be taken against me. When these officers know that no action will be taken against me, they will never be able to, or they will never be willing to follow this law. State information commissioners have not given online reports in the prescribed time limit. So, what happens is state information commissioners are told that every single year how many RTIs did you receive, how many have you resolved, how many are pending. You have to give all that data online. That is told to them that this is your responsibility, that every single year you have to give your annual report within a specific time period. But most state information commissioners have not done that. Most state information commissions have not given online report within the set time period, and there is no action taken against them. Information commissioners don't even have content power. Have you read about contempt of court. Have you read about this in Indian polity? Read about this contempt of court? So the idea is the same. Contempt of court simply means if the court has given an order and you still don't abide by that. If the court gave an order but you still did not agree to that, that is called contempt of court. In simple terms, if for example, let's say there is a case of a landlord versus a tenant, and the court gave an order that the tenant has to vacate the house. But even then, if they don't vacate the house, the court has the power to give them punishment because they have the power to punish for contempt of court. So, contempt of court means when you don't abide by the order given to the court. Information Commission does not have that power. So, interestingly, if Information Commission gives an order to a government department that you should give out this information, even if the government department denies after that, Information Commission cannot do anything. Information Commission does not have any contempt power. That's a big problem. When you don't have power to punish for your contempt, that means there is no reason for anyone to agree and accept your decision. Whatever decision that you have taken, whatever order that you have given, if your order is not accepted by someone and you can't do anything about that, that means your power is reduced automatically. That becomes a problem. Not just this, there are huge number of pending cases. I told you there are over 2 lakh pending appeals right now. The reason is that there is no time limit at the second appeal level at the Information Commission. There is no time limit. And that's why so many cases are still pending. Then there are vacancies in Information Commission. As I showed you the photo as well some time back. Out of the 10 information commissioners that can be appointed, government has only appointed 2. So there is one chief information commissioner and there are 2 information commissioners only. So in a commission that is supposed to have up to 11 members, we only have 3 members in total, which obviously means that there will be a lot of problems in the implementation of the law. From the side of the citizens also there are problems. One big problem, many citizens are using this as a blackmailing tool. The example that I gave you, that if the DM goes beyond his or her way to help someone in need without showing the paperwork, that DM might find himself or herself in trouble later on because an RTI may be filed against him or her to get out information. In fact, today, many people, you ask their profession, many people's profession is that they're RTI activist. RTI activist has become a proper profession where many people can just keep filing RTI, just keep filing RTIs time and time again. Their hope is that they can get some information which they can use to blackmail people, which they can use to blackmail the government officers, which they can use to blackmail the government departments. That is why the people who really are filing the RTI for people's benefit, they take a backseat. There's lack of awareness as well because there is no high fee. It's just a 10 rupee thing to file the RTI. Many people file the RTI. I'll give you a real example. Okay, about 2 years ago, there was a headline. The headline was that RTI finds out that Delhi chief minister spent 2 crore rupees in tea and samosa in last year in his office. This was the headline, that someone filed an RTI to ask how much did this Delhi chief minister spend in chai, a tea or samosa in last 1 year. Now, this was a heading. Now, it looks like a huge number, right? It looks like a number. Oh, the government is spending so much money, corrupt government, poor government, whatever. But if you actually calculate, it's not a big amount. See, calculate this in the least possible manner. If we calculate this in the least possible manner, let's assume tea at least 10 rupees, samosa at least 10 rupees. So per person at least 20 rupees, right? Per person at least 20 rupees. Now, if then you have to divide this by the number of days in a year, by number of days in the year, and then see how many people actually visit the chief minister office every single day. It's not a huge number, but people file RTI just for getting sensational headlines, just to get this information so that they can make the headline and then they can try to blackmail the politicians. Let's see, I got to know this information about you. I will tell the people that you have spent crores of rupees just to buy tea and samosa, so you have better pay me this much money. And that becomes a problem. The other problem is a lack of awareness that we have amongst the people about the RTI. See, all of you are well educated people. All of you at some point of time must have thought that I should ask this information from the government. But even then, very few of you, only a handful of you have ever filed an RTI. Why is that? You are all educated, you all have access to internet, you all have some questions for the government that you want to know answers to. But even then, you have hardly filed an RTI. Very few of you have actually filed an RTI. Why is that the case? The reason again is that there is just no awareness about it. Many people think, oh, it's very difficult. It hardly takes 5 minutes to do that online. You spend much more time scrolling reels on Instagram, but no, we have no idea how to file the RTI because we have never even thought in that direction. The other problem with the RTI, as I discussed, was that there is something called OSA, Official Secret Act. Before we go there, do you know what is ARC? Have you heard the name ARC? Anyone who has not heard the name, what is ARC? Okay. Those who don't know, let me tell you. Those who know, great. Those who don't know, let me tell you. ARC, as most of you know, stands for Administrative Reforms Commission. In India's history, ARC or Administrative Reforms Commission has been established twice. Once in 1960s and the second one was in 2005. So this committee that was established in 2005 is called the second ARC. It was established and it was told suggest what are the changes the government should introduce in India's administration to make the country a better place for everyone. So they were given a very wide mandate. They were told that give a report on different topics of how to improve administration in the country. The ARC in total gave 15 reports on different topics. They gave a total of 15 reports in which they recommended thousands of changes. Later on, in one of the classes in governance, we will discuss about the important recommendations given by the ARC. We will discuss what are the reports that the ARC gave, what are the recommendations. If you look at the reports given by the ARC, first report, the title of the report itself was Right to Information. So one of the reports that they gave, report name was Right to Information, in which they suggested what changes to be made in the law, how to make it better, what are the issues in the law, etc. Remembering the recommendations of the ARC is important. Why? Whatever recommendations the ARC gives on any topic are extremely important because you can write that as a suggestion in the mains exam. So in the mains exam, if you have a question where the UPSC is asking you, let's say, about the reforms needed in the RTI law, what changes can we have in the RTI law, rather than writing from your own mind, it is always advisable to quote certain committees or commissions that have recommended certain changes. So, for example, if the question is about RTI, how to improve the law, you can quote that the recommendation of the second ARC should be implemented. These recommendations include dash dash dash. That is why the ARC and its recommendations are so important. They have given recommendations on a wide variety of issues. As and when a topic comes where ARC has given some recommendation, we will discuss those. And we will have a separate class on important recommendations of the ARC as such, which you can actually write in the mains answer. This will add a lot of value to your answers in the form of suggestions mainly. So, what have they suggested? How to improve the RTI law? First, they said repeal the Official Secret Act. We'll discuss this act in a few minutes. As I said earlier, Official Secret Act is a law that allows the government to classify certain informations as the official secret. When they classify certain documents as official secret, that means the government cannot share this information with anyone. So when you file an RTI, which the government department does not want to answer, the government departments think that no, this is an information which will trouble the government. So what they will do, they will just say that the document is an official secret. That becomes a problem. The second ARC suggested that the Official Secret Act was introduced by the British. It should be repealed now. They have also suggested oath of secrecy should be replaced by oath of transparency. Now, what exactly is this? Have you seen Prime Minister or the ministers taking oath in India? Have you seen that live on TV? Have you seen the Prime Minister or minister or even the Chief Minister when they take the oath? Some people have, some people have not. Okay. When you see that, if you have seen that, great. If you don't, if you have not seen that, let me tell you. So what happens is they take two oaths, not one. They take two oaths. What are the two oaths that they take? One is the oath of office, and other is the oath of secrecy. So they take two oaths, not one. There is one oath of office. Oath of office is that I will do justice to this office, I will follow laws, etc. Whatever I believe in the constitution. Second is called the oath of secrecy. Oath of secrecy is they say that any information that is given to me as the minister, I will not share that information with anyone else unless absolutely necessary. So they say that as the information, as the minister, whatever information is given to me, I will keep it with myself. I will only share it with those who actually require this. As simple as that. So what happens is ministers give excuse of this oath for not sharing any information. Whenever any RTI is asked where the ministers have to respond, the ministers simply say that no, 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 I can't give this information. Why? Because I have taken the oath of secrecy. That information is only to save them, but they don't then give the information saying that, oh, it's a secret, I've taken the oath. So the idea is it should be replaced with oath of transparency, that I should be transparent and not hold it secret. The other suggestion is review of the second schedule. This is what? List of exempted organizations. List of exempted organizations. That is the organizations against which you cannot file the RTI, the organizations from where you can only and only file RTI about corruption or human right violations. That list should be reviewed. It should not be a very long list. Also, classification of confidential documents. That is a practice that is misused. The government classifies a lot of documents as confidential. That should not be the case. And the government should have a professionalized record management system. We should make sure that the records are managed in such a manner that it is easy to extract information. Because right now, most government departments don't have a proper record mention. Divya is saying oath and affirmation are mentioned in the constitution. Oath of secrecy is also mentioned. Yes, Divya, oath of secrecy is also mentioned in the third schedule of the Indian constitution. Second ARC also says that information commissioners, their election or their selection process should also change. Right now, as you know, they're appointed by the President of India on the recommendation of a three-member committee: Prime Minister, Leader of the Operation of the Lok Sabha, and the Minister of the Prime Minister's choice. And most of them are from civil services only. The suggestion is at least half should be from non-civil services background. At least half should be from non-civil services background. Why? The reason why the governments want civil servants in these positions is, as I said, every political party has some favorite civil servants. Look right now, so many of our civil servants have retired and then joined the government as ministers. You can see that. Look at earlier governments as well. It's a trend, not just at the center, at the state governments also. There are multiple state governments and at the center government also where you will see a lot of the bureaucrats either they retire before the age and they join the politics, or they retire and then they join the politics because they are closer to a political party. So obviously those political parties want these bureaucrats to be at important positions. Now let's assume this. Let's assume there is a bureaucrat who is appointed as the Central Information Commission by the government. Would that bureaucrat give an order forcing the government to give an information to people? No, because he knows that, oh, government only has appointed me, so I'm close to the government. My job is to protect them and not really to hold them accountable. That is problematic. That's why the suggestion is at least half should be from non-civil services background, and the committee to appoint them should also change. Right now, out of the three members in the committee, two are from the government, one from the opposition. No outsider, no judiciary, nothing. The suggestion is we should have the Chief Justice of India and a civil society representative, so someone from outside. Three people, one from government, one from judiciary, one from outside at least. So that it's a fair process. PIOs should also get proper training. Right now, PIOs don't get training. They are just told that from tomorrow onwards, this is an additional responsibility being given to you. They are not given proper training, as in what they have to do, how do they have to perform their functions. Also, second ARC has suggested that PIO should not be a junior ranked officer. Those who are being appointed as PIOs should at least be deputy secretary or a director. So they should also be of IAS rank at least. Because right now, when you appoint very junior officers as PIOs, they are not able to take out information or ask their seniors to get the information. State information commissions should also coordinate with themselves. Center Information Commission should also coordinate with the different states to help them in their working. All these are recommendations given by the second ARC, which in their opinion will help in improving the functioning of the RTI. Now, a few very interesting questions. First question: are political parties under RTI? Are the political parties under RTI? What do you think? Can you ask a question to the political parties under the RTI? Okay. A few yeses, some no's in the comment section. They are not under the RTI. They are not under the RTI. Now, that's a big problem. The political parties, obviously, no political party wants to be under RTI. No one by It's no one by his or her choice says I want to be under RTA. Now let's understand their argument. And there are arguments given on both sides. Okay, let me first tell you the argument that the political parties give. Why do the political parties say we don't want to be under or we should not be under RTI? See, RTI is what? RTI is for public authorities that are running on public's money. I have the right to information from the government because government is running on my taxes. Political parties say we don't take any taxes from the people. Whoever is donating to us is donating voluntarily. So why do we have to give information under RTI? The idea of political parties is that they are not public authorities. They are not taking public money. They are not taking any taxes. So they should not be under RTI. However, there is a counter argument. The counter argument is number one, if you look at political parties, most big political parties have huge offices in Delhi. How are they able to afford those offices? Because the government gave them the land. Political parties for their office get land from the government. So it's not that they are not taking any help from the government, first. Second, who is in the appointment committee of CIC? We just read CIC appointment committee has Prime Minister, a cabinet minister, and the leader of opposition of the Lok Sabha also. So the leader of opposition of the Lok Sabha will be from which party? Congress party. So they cannot say we are not running the government. Opposition parties also have a role in the government. They can't say, oh, no, no, we are not running the government, so how are we under the RTI? No, they also have a role in running of the government as the opposition. So ideally, they should also be under RTI. But why would the political parties do that? See, when it comes to these decisions, all political parties are one. There are certain topics on which every political party supports each other. First topic, increasing the salary of politicians and MPs. Everyone will vote yes. Second topic, political parties should not be under RTI. Everyone votes yes. Third issue, political parties should not tell where are they getting the money from. Everyone says yes. So all political parties agree to this. And that's why the political parties are not under the RTI. Second question, is the judiciary under the RTI? Partially, yes. Partially, yes. So, how is it under the RTI? So, what happened was in 2019, Chief Justice Ranjan Gogoi was about to retire. Just before retiring, he announced that from today onwards, Chief Justice of India's office will be under the RTI. However, it is very partial, means the kind of questions that you can ask are very, very limited. You can only ask questions about the administrative work of the court. You cannot ask any case related question. You can only ask very few questions about the administration of the court and nothing else. There is no clarity about which are the types of questions that you can ask. No case related question will be allowed. It's a good beginning because there are a lot of allegations that judiciary is not transparent enough. Many people complain that judiciary should set an example for the government. So it's a good beginning in that part. But the reality is, if you look at how the judiciary has brought Chief Justice Office under the RTI, they have not really given a lot of options. You can ask questions only and only about the administrative part. The other thing that you can do is you can ask questions about the asset of the judges, means how much money do they have. For example, ministers also have to declare how many assets do they have, how much property do they own. So for the judges also, you can ask how much money do you have, their personal assets can be kept under the scrutiny. These are a few changes, but again, not very important questions can be asked from the judiciary under the RTI. The challenge here is, for bringing judiciary under the RTI, it has increased the administrative burden of the Supreme Court even further. Supreme Court has over 80,000 cases pending. Just the Supreme Court, just the Supreme Court. Over 80,000 cases are pending. On top of that, now you have pending RTI appeals also. So, do you think that the Supreme Court would actually have time to leave the cases and look into RTI appeals? That is something that you cannot expect. Lack of clarity on what can be asked in the Supreme Court. Lack of clarity on what can be asked, what cannot be asked, and that is why right now there is not much to gain from the fact that the judiciary or the Chief Justice of India is also under the RTI. The last thing in this topic is OSA, the Official Secret Act. The government of India has Official Secret Act 1923 running for over 100 years now. This was introduced by the British because the British did not want any information to be published in the newspapers. So basically, what used to happen at the British was, whenever any newspaper used to publish information against the British government, they used to punish the newspaper editor by saying that this is an official secret. How did you publish this information? That continues even today. Even today, the law says that there are two types of things covered under this. One, spying or espionage. Spying means, as you know, basically taking out government information illegally, and disclosure of secret information of the government. These two things are covered under this law. The problem here is the government misuses this because there is no definition of what is secret information. There is no definition of what do you mean by secret information. So tomorrow, if the government wants to randomly say that a certain file is secret information, they can do that. The government can randomly decide what is secret and what is not a secret. And that becomes a big problem. Because if you don't know what is secret and what is not, it allows the government to hide information from the people in the form of RTI just by saying, oh, this is a information that is official secret, we can't give it to you. Not just this, the government can actually punish a lot of people. Usually under this law, many journalists are punished. Many journalists who actually break certain news, break certain scandal from the government, they are threatened not to give out this information. Why? The government threatens them that we will say it's an official secret. How did you publish this news in the newspaper? So a lot of journalists usually are actually covered under this. Many of them have been punished under this. It's a British era law, first thought of in 1889, then given the final shape in 1923, and this exists even today. There have been a lot of demands that the government should remove this law. It's a British era colonial law. But please understand, no government in power would reduce its own authority. When you come to power, the logic is to acquire as much power as possible. No government wants to give away power. No government in their own mind would say, oh, we don't want Official Secret Act. Every government wants Official Secret Act. Only when they're in the opposition, they will say, oh, this is bad. But when they are in power, every government likes the Official Secret Act when they are in power. It is only when they're in the opposition that they have a problem. When they're in the opposition, they are like, oh no, this is bad, we should not have this. So you cannot expect any government to actually change this, because see, there is a very famous quote, and that is, everyone in power behaves the same way. Everyone in power behaves the same way. And it applies to everyone. I'll give you an example. Today, you would want that Mukesh Ambani should give away all his wealth. Many people have this idea, right? Mukesh Ambani is so rich. Why doesn't he distribute his money to everyone? People will be so happy. Have you thought of this? Many people have thought of this idea, right? There are so many poor people in India. If he gives 1 lakh rupees to everyone, everyone will be so happy, right? You would have all thought of this. But the moment that you have that much money, trust me, you will not do that. You are thinking about that because you are not in his position. Tomorrow, if you get that much money and someone tells you, oh, why don't you give away your money? Everyone will be so happy. Your reaction would be, why should I give away money? This is my money. Everyone in power behaves the same way. So when the parties are in the opposition, they demand that this act should be removed. But when they come to power, no one wants to remove the law. Be it the Congress, be it the BJP, anyone you call them, everyone wants to have maximum power in their hand. The issue with this law is it is in direct conflict with the Right to Information Act. As I said, under Right to Information Act, the government has the power to deny information to you by calling it an official secret. That becomes a problem. It is also a breach of national security as well, because official secret has no definition in the law, and the government randomly decides what according to is official secret, what is not. Now I'll tell you one more uh, idea. So countries across the world do this. They hide information. There is nothing new in this. US, for example, has a law. US law says that, for example, today the government has called a file as a secret, official secret document. Okay, after 50 years, it will automatically come in the public domain. In the US, if the government today says a file is secret, after 50 years, it will automatically be released. In India, we don't have any such law. That's something that we have to work towards. There are still files over the death of Lal Bahadur Shastri, over the death of Subhash Chandra Bose, that are still kept hidden. We still don't have any information about that. There are many committees that have suggested removing Official Secret Act. Second ARC has suggested this, as I said. Way back in 1971, Law Commission also said that Official Secret Act should be removed. But governments have not done that. Why? Because, as I told you, governments work in their own interest and not because something has been suggested by the committee. This brings us to the end of today's topic. I have a few practice questions for you. As I said earlier, from governance, there are some topics that can appear in the prelims exam also, in the mains exam also. So now I'm going to share with you certain questions that you might take from the prelims exam from this topic. Let's see if you can answer them. This is the first question. Read this very carefully and then I'll give you your timer. Should we begin? Your 30 seconds start now. Read it carefully. Time up. 33% people got this right. This is D. None of these is correct. First is wrong. We discussed this. Removal process of information commissioner is the same as UPSC members, not the Supreme Court judges. Second is also wrong. One, Prime Minister. Second, leader of opposition of the Lok Sabha. Third can be any cabinet minister of the Prime Minister's choice. Any cabinet minister, not necessarily the Home Minister. Third is also wrong. Shall not be MLA and not related to or not connected to any political party. Should not be MP MLA and should not be connected to any political party as well. That is why the answer here is D. All the three here are wrong. Next question. Read this carefully. We start. Should we begin? Okay. Oh, only 19% people got this right. This is again D. Again, none of these is correct. Let's see. No time limit for first appeal. No. We discussed this. First appeal has a time limit of 30 days. For second appeal, there is no time limit. For the first appeal, there is a time limit. Second, I think second was a tricky part. Second statement is Supreme Court may direct the CIC to decide certain appeal. No. In fact, if you look at the law, there is a section of the RTI Act, section 23 of the Act. Section 23 of the Act says no court shall entertain any appeal about any order of the CIC. So the highest appeal is with the Information Commission only. The courts will not interfere here. So second is also wrong. The court do not interfere. It is with the Election Information Commission only. They will decide the case. Third is wrong. Time period can be extended to 35 days. Remember, within 30 days you usually get a response, but if you file it to a different or a wrong department, APIO will transfer it and it will be extended from 30 to 35 days, not 45. If you have to file an RTI with, let's say, Urban Development Ministry, and you filed it by mistake to Railway Ministry, their APIO will transfer it and it will take 5 more days, so it will become 35 and not 45. Anurag is saying, is Prime Minister under RTI? Anurag, see, no specific person is under RTI. So your question should be, is the PMO under RTI? Yes, it is. So as a person, no. It's a department or public authority. So anything that the Prime Minister does comes under PMO. So yes, PMO is under the RTI. Next, third question. Read this carefully. Read this carefully. So time has started. Karthik, what exactly is your question? Shalu, yes, you can. See, your question about if I can ask this in RTI or not, the only way to get the answer is file the RTI, you will get to know whether you can ask these questions or not. 38% people got this right. This is C. I discussed this earlier as well. One of the problems in the RTI law is there is no specific information on this. It just says substantially funded. Substantially funded. That is a big problem. That is, when you don't clarify what exactly is substantially funded, that becomes a problem.